Chapter 272. Inheritance? Test? If you acknowledge me, then I'll acknowledge the inheritance. Before this, you said that I'm not qualified and wanted to kill me. But now you used your life to exchange for everything, using the word test to describe everything? Right now, Qin Wentian was nothing but a predator. Since you want to pass on the inheritance, then I'll snatch it away. Seeing how Qin Wentian killed Zhu Sha and the golden-armored young man, the expressions of the people in the Great Hall all changed. Their gazes were all fixed on Qin Wentian, their countenances flickering with sharpness. At this moment, Qin Wentian swept his gaze onto Zhan Chen, as a terrifying killing intent flickered in his eyes. Zhan Chen could feel the coldness in Qin Wentian's eyes, and he knew that Qin Wentian wanted to kill him. Busy. A raging wind gusted by as Qin Wentian waved his palms. Momentarily, the astral arm shot towards Zhan Chen, as fast as lightning. In the Great Hall, Qin Wentian was the overlord. Zhan Chen's countenance drastically changed. His astral soul erupted forth, and his entire person was bathed in boundless sword light. His body seemed to be fused with the sword, and the terrifying whistling sounds of the sword could be heard as the astral arm trembled. Slash! Zhan Chen roared, and a blood-colored beam of light appeared on his finger, piercing through the air. Instantly, a blood-colored gigantic sword howled as it shot out. Boom! The astral arm slammed into the gigantic sword, causing it to buzz unceasingly. As though it wanted to block the path of the astral arm, Zhan Chen's countenance grew heavy as he frantically pointed his finger forward. Kill him! Zhan Chen roared, only to see Yang Fan's silhouette flickering as he lunged towards Qin Wentian. His palms could pluck the stars and seize the moon, exuding boundless might. But at the same time, Bailu Jing also appeared beside Qin Wentian. Executing the 9 beheadings of the great sun, golden rays of light manifested in the air, directly slicing apart the palm imprint. Humph! Qin Wentian coldly snorted, as thunderous rumbling sounds echoed out. The divine inscriptions on the ground howled with rage as they frenziedly swept towards Yang Fan. At the same time, a few long spears pierced towards Zhan Chen. Zhan Chen's countenance paled as he slammed out with his palms. Momentarily, a beam of light appeared in the air as Zhan Chen slashed out with his palms. Instantly, a bright light flashed as Zhan Chen's body was swept away. A light sound rang out, and the crowd only saw Zhan Chen's body reappearing outside the Great Hall. He coughed out several mouthfuls of blood. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over to Zhan Chen, who was standing outside the main hall. Their gazes met, and both of them were filled with a terrifying killing intent. They both wanted to kill each other as soon as possible. As expected of a heavens chosen from the Pill Emperor Hall, Qin Wentian was truly difficult to deal with. Even with the aid of a 4th-ranked grand formation, Qin Wentian had no way to kill him. If he only relied on his own strength, Zhan Chen would be able to kill him easily. After all, he hadn't cultivated for a long time, and his cultivation base was still shallow. Qin Wentian stared at Yang Fan once again. His astral arms were as fast as lightning, and Yang Fan's countenance was incredibly ugly to behold. He violently blasted out with his star-seizing palms, causing Yang Fan to be forced to retreat with great speed. After which, he stepped out of the Great Hall as well. If he stayed behind with Qin Wentian controlling everything in the Great Hall, he would still die. Qin Wentian then turned his gaze to Hua Feng and the rest. Their countenances were all incomparably unsightly, and they all retreated, leaving the Great Hall. However, they didn't go too far away, and merely waited outside the Great Hall, their eyes flickering with an intense coldness. Qin Wentian could borrow the power of the divine inscriptions to control everything in the Great Hall. Nobody could contend against him, and anyone who stayed within the Great Hall would be met with a crisis of death. But even if Qin Wentian obtained the inheritance, he would still have to exit the Great Hall. As long as he did so, they would make sure that he would die without a burial ground. Those golden-armored men all stared at Qin Wentian. They understood that Qin Wentian could do whatever he wanted here. And if they stayed behind, they would all die in Qin Wentian's hands. Bzzz, the astral arm swept out as one of the golden-armored men roared in rage. This brat is a traitor. There's no way to control him. I will delay him. The rest of you join forces to summon the Golden Armor King to kill him. As the sound of his voice faded, a long spear erupted forth, slamming into the astral arms. Boundless golden light radiated from his body, and it felt as though his body was on the verge of shattering, yet he stubbornly endured it. At the same time, the other golden-armored men also shot out their spears, directly blasting into the statue. Boom! A crisp sound rang out from the statue, as though the outer shell of the statue had shattered. Gradually, rays of golden light flashed, and Qin Wentian discovered that this statue was also a golden-armored man. But the size of this one was much larger. Puppet. Qin Wentian could tell with a single glance that this golden-armored man was different from the 9 golden-armored men. The 9 golden-armored men had a cultivation base, and weren't puppets. But the golden-armored giant before him was a true puppet. That golden armor seemed to be forged from gold, and was filled with a terrifying might. Chi chi chi. The bodies of the golden-armored men all exploded at the same time, seeking their own deaths. After which, golden motes of light shot out from their bodies and shot towards the golden-armored giant, drilling into its body. Haha, since you don't want to acknowledge the inheritance, just die then. The golden-armored man howled in joy as Qin Wentian crushed him. After which, the golden-armored man's body also exploded, and the golden motes of light drilled into the golden-armored giant's body. Instantly, the golden-armored giant opened its eyes and stood up, placing the 2 ancient scrolls on the ground. Its eyes were filled with boundless killing intent as it stared at Qin Wentian. Boom! The golden-armored giant stepped out, causing the earth to tremble. This caused Qin Wentian's eyes to gleam with sharpness. The 9 golden-armored men weren't puppets, they were humans. And as for this statue, everyone thought that it was the inheritance left behind by an ascendant who had fallen here. Who would have thought that the statue was actually a puppet? Such a scene couldn't help but cause people to ponder. Qin Wentian stared at the golden-armored giant, as though he wanted to see through it completely. In this training ground where only Yuanfu cultivators could enter, a 4th-ranked puppet was indeed an invincible existence. BZ. The golden-armored giant flicked a finger at Qin Wentian. As the finger landed, the space around it seemed to distort as a terrifying amount of heavenly energy congregated around it, causing a beam of golden light to appear, capable of penetrating through everything. Qin Wentian's countenance changed. The astral arm instantly appeared in front of him as he blasted out a terrifying palm strike. The 2 attacks collided, causing the great hall to tremble unceasingly. Boundless amounts of divine inscriptions surged forth, blasting towards the golden-armored giant as the astral arm also smashed out. However, the golden-armored giant wasn't afraid at all. He continued advancing, and with a wave of his hand, he ruthlessly collided with the astral arm. Boom. The astral arm directly grabbed the palms of the golden-armored giant, refusing to let go. Qin Wentian's silhouette whistled through the air, as fast as lightning, as he dashed towards the golden-armored giant. The eyes of the golden-armored giant were fixated on Qin Wentian. It was akin to a bolt of golden lightning, wanting to penetrate Qin Wentian's head. Qin Wentian only felt a piercing pain in the center of his brows. Similarly, a terrifying light erupted forth from the center of his brows, colliding with the gaze of the golden-armored giant. Qin Wentian's palms were placed on the golden-armored giant's body as a cold smile appeared on his face. A 4th-ranked puppet could flaunt its might? Qin Wentian blasted out with his palms, only to see an expression of disdain flickering in the eyes of the golden-armored giant. A mere 3rd-level Yuanfu cultivator wanted to shake a 4th-ranked puppet? Was this a dream? Shatter the void. Qin Wentian blasted out with his palms, directly slamming into the head of the puppet. Instantly, a surge of energy gushed into the mind of the puppet, causing its eyes to change color. A surge of energy was destroying its defensive divine inscriptions. How was this possible? Qin Wentian could see through its divine inscriptions? The defensive divine rune on his head was the most well hidden, so how could it be broken? Divine inscriptions were completely inscribed. Even if a divine inscriptionist's perception was strong enough to see it, how difficult would it be to decipher it? However, as Qin Wentian slammed his palm down, it clearly discovered that the defensive divine runes in its head were disintegrating. How high was Qin Wentian's attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions? Right now, his perception was even more terrifying than before. It was as though he could see through the divine inscriptions of his opponent. How difficult would it be for him to decipher them? Qin Wentian's palm struck out continuously, and every strike landed on the giant's head. The golden-armored giant let out a roar, but soon, with a loud thud, the golden-armored giant knelt on the ground. Roar! Roars of unwillingness rang out. You will die a horrible death. The sound of curses rang out, yet Qin Wentian's countenance was as cold as ever. He frenziedly unleashed his attacks until the golden-armored giant became a masterless puppet. Only then did Qin Wentian store it into his interspatial ring. The masterless puppet from now on belonged to him. Qin Wentian slowly walked towards the two ancient scrolls. He picked them up, and after which Qin Wentian opened them, sending his will into one of the ancient scrolls. This ancient scroll contains all the powerful innate techniques I've cultivated, as well as the insights I've gained from comprehending the divine inscriptions. Now I'll pass them all on to you. An ancient voice drifted into his ears. Qin Wentian sent his will into it, and as expected, he saw many powerful innate techniques. Qin Wentian laughed. He sent his will into the other scroll, only to hear a voice reverberating in his mind. This lord is the gold element celestial. When I was young, my path was filled with hardships. After that, I obtained a heaven-defying cultivation technique, the gold element ancient scroll, and cultivated an indestructible golden body. My entire body was akin to a divine weapon, and from then on, I roamed unhindered in Grand Xia, sweeping through all the experts. This lord was harmed by my enemies, and passed away in meditation. I left behind my inheritance, imparting everything I've cultivated in my entire life to my descendants. If there's someone who is fated to pass the test and receive my inheritance, you must cultivate it well. Remember 3 things. Firstly, this cultivation technique is heaven-defying, and must never be made known to others, including the elders of the sect. If not, calamity would surely befall this lord. Secondly, this cultivation technique is incomparably tyrannical, and when cultivating it, one would encounter many abnormalities, and only those with great determination would be able to cultivate it. Thirdly, you must never let anyone know that you're cultivating this cultivation technique. If my enemies learn of it, you'll die without a doubt. But of course, if one day you have some accomplishments and step into the celestial phenomenon realm, you'll definitely be able to find out who my enemies are. If you have the heart, avenge this lord. The voice faded away, dissipating into nothingness. Qin Wentian's eyes flickered with an intense sharpness. The gold element ancient scroll. A heaven-defying cultivation technique? Cultivating it without letting others know of it? A cold light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes. He thought of the 9 golden-armored guardians. They weren't puppets but humans. Little brother Qin, congratulations on obtaining the Ascendant's inheritance. Old Li laughed. He, Bailu Jing and Bailu Yi remained in the Great Hall. Qin Wentian smiled at Old Li. After which, he walked to the entrance of the Great Hall and stared at the crowd as he spoke. The disputes in the secret realm are all for the sake of obtaining the inheritance. Now that I've obtained it, I'm sure all of you want to kill me. I, Qin, don't wish to be invincible in the entire moon continent. I'm willing to forsake the Ascendant's inheritance and bestow it to all of you. After speaking, Qin Wentian flicked his palms, tossing the ancient scroll out of the Great Hall, causing the crowd to be dumbfounded. Ascendant's inheritance? Qin Wentian had discarded it like a pair of worn-out shoes. Chapter 273. This inheritance, Qin Wentian had no choice but to give it up. The 9 golden-armored cultivators resembled puppets, yet they were in the form of humans. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin Wentian had opened his third eye, he would have been deceived by the golden-armored cultivators, thinking that they were puppets. 9 stellar martial cultivators didn't release their astral souls, yet they cultivated the same type of energy. Indeed, they resembled puppets. However, after Qin Wentian looked at the gold punishment ancient scroll, a thought popped up in his head. Could it be that these 9 golden-armored cultivators also cultivated the inheritance? As for the message left behind, it also caused Qin Wentian to feel suspicious. The golden-armored cultivator mentioned that this cultivation art was tyrannical, and that there would be abnormalities when cultivating it. He even warned Qin Wentian not to let his elders know about this, causing him to feel that something was wrong. Even though the golden-armored cultivator pointed out that he was killed by someone close to him, Qin Wentian still had his suspicions. Since they were looking for someone to inherit the inheritance, why were only Yuanfu cultivators able to enter, and Heavenly Dipper sovereigns couldn't? Since Heavenly Dipper sovereigns couldn't enter, it could be explained that the inheritance only depended on one's talent. But why did the golden armored cultivator say that his cultivation base was too low, and he wasn't worthy of the inheritance? Not only that, although his cultivation base wasn't high, he knew that he had an extraordinary background, not to mention that he had obtained multiple cultivation arts from the Azure Emperor. Hence, he didn't place much importance on this cultivation art. No matter how heaven-defying the golden armored cultivator's words were, his heart wouldn't waver. Qin Wentian's personality was extremely decisive. Since he had suspicions and it wasn't a cultivation art that he needed, he would directly give it up. His heart didn't waver in the slightest. He didn't even leave it behind for Bailu Jing and Bailu Yi. He felt that there might be a problem with the inheritance. Qin Wentian stared at the people outside the Great Hall. None of them moved, and their eyes gleamed with sharpness as they stared at the ancient scroll. Evidently, none of them had expected Qin Wentian to do this. Even Bailu Yi and the rest turned pale. It wasn't easy for them to obtain this inheritance, and they actually wanted to give it away? Glancing at the people standing outside Zhan Chan, Yang Fan, Zhao Lai and Hua Feng, the powers behind these people could indeed represent the entire moon continent. If Qin Wentian became enemies with them, Qin Wentian would no longer be able to establish a foothold in the moon continent. In fact, it might even affect her White Deer Institute. That ancient scroll contains the inheritance art of the gold element ascendant. Now I'll give it up and give it to all of you. As for the ancient scroll in my hand, it contains the inheritance of the Tao of divine inscriptions and formations. It's exactly what I need. I, Qin, will keep it for myself. In that case, I won't let down all of you. Let's forget about the enmity between us after we exit this place. Naturally, if all of you still refuse to give up and come looking for trouble with me, I, Qin, will definitely kill all of you. Qin Wentian's voice rumbled like thunder, filled with magnanimity. Although he said it this way, Qin Wentian understood in his heart that the enmity between them wouldn't be resolved so easily. Not to mention that Zhan Chan, he had already exposed his secret. How could Zhan Chan spare him? But now he had already said that he wasn't willing to become the target of public criticism. At the very least, if he gave up the inheritance art, would these heavens chosen from the transcendent powers have the face to use the elders of their respective clans or sects to deal with him? After speaking, Qin Wentian flicked his sleeves as rumbling sounds echoed out. Momentarily, the doors of the great hall slowly closed, no longer bothering with the matters of the outside world. Outside, the eyes of the crowd gleamed with sharpness as they stared at the ancient scroll. So it turned out that this was the inheritance art left behind by the gold element ascendant. This cultivation art, I want it. Only to see that Zhao Lai was the first to step out. A blazing saber appeared in his hands, flickering with a terrifying fiery light, exuding a terrifying heat. His silhouette dashed out, directly aiming for the ancient scroll. As soon as he moved, the others also moved. Yang Fan stretched out his palms as the star-seizing palm imprint whistled out. A gigantic palm appeared in the air, grabbing towards the ancient scroll. Stay here. Zhao Lai's saber flashed with a brilliant light, as though space itself was about to be sliced apart by him. And at this instant Zhan Chan and Hua Feng also moved, their silhouettes dashing towards the ancient scroll. Since Qin Wentian had explained everything clearly, there was no doubt that this ancient scroll was an inheritance art. If not, if Qin Wentian wanted to cheat them and one of them showed the scroll to the others, they would know that they had been cheated by Qin Wentian. If that was the case, Qin Wentian would have offended them even more. Since that was the case, they might as well not hand over the ancient scroll. Hence, there was an 80% chance that this cultivation art was real. However, at this moment the entire space started to tremble. The golden armored male had said that if the inheritance was obtained by someone else, this place would collapse. In the air, the statue also trembled, and with a deafening boom, it directly exploded into pieces. In that instant, the entire space was swept up by a powerful gust of wind. This training ground was on the verge of collapse. The great hall that Qin Wentian was in was also trembling. Bai Lui inclined her head, staring at the trembling great hall as she asked, "What should we do?" "Let's go." Qin Wentian spoke, as he flew in the opposite direction of the exit, directly blasting a hole in the great hall. Their group flickered as they sped away. The gust of wind grew stronger and stronger, and it was as though a sandstorm was sweeping over them. This space is already collapsing, but it shouldn't be a threat to our lives. Bai Lu Jing shouted in the midst of the sandstorm, wanting to pull Bai Lui back, only to discover that the sandstorm was blowing into their eyes, causing them to be unable to open their eyes at all. Qin Wentian closed his eyes, using his perception to probe his surroundings. Abruptly, his heart trembled. "This is bad," Qin Wentian mumbled. Up in the air, it was as though a desert had swept over them, directly burying them. Their bodies moved along with the flow of the sand, and in an instant, they had no idea where they were swept to. The four of them were completely separated from each other. 3 days later, news circulated that the training ground for divine inscriptions had disappeared. The ancient city had been buried by the sandstorm. At the original location of the ancient city, there were several people gathered there, staring at the ruins of the ancient city, yet they couldn't see anything else. There was only a vast expanse of golden sand. What happened? The hearts of the crowd were filled with curiosity. It was rumored that the training ground for divine inscriptions was the Tao cultivation ground of an ascendant, and there was a high possibility that the inheritance of the ascendant could be found there. If that was the case, why would such a situation occur? Where was the training ground? And who had obtained the inheritance of the ascendant? The news gradually circulated around the moon continent, causing more and more people to gather here out of curiosity. Even those from the major powers had arrived, but at this moment, there was also news that the number 11 ranker of the heavenly fate rankings, Zhan Chan, had already returned to the Pill Emperor Hall, after which, Yang Fan from the Star-Seizing Manor, Zhao Lai from the Sky Ember sect, and Hua Feng from the Hua clan all returned to their respective clans and sections. And after that, there was also news that the inheritance of the Ascendant had been obtained by Zhan Chan from the Pill Emperor Hall. Many people sighed in their hearts. Zhan Chan was indeed worthy of being ranked number 11 on the Heavenly Fate rankings, the strongest participant in the training ground. Now that he had obtained the inheritance of the Ascendant, Zhan Chen's status in the Pill Emperor Hall would definitely be even higher than before. As for what exactly happened in the training ground, and why so many experts had fallen, nobody knew. But one could imagine that the training ground this time around must have been extremely intense. Bai Lu Jing and Bai Lu Yi also returned to the White Deer Institute. Bai Lu Yi snorted disdainfully when she heard the rumors circulating in the outside world. Among all the rumors, only Qin Wentian's name wasn't mentioned. Most probably, the news of the heavens chosen from the transcendent powers being chased out of the Great Inheritance Hall was something that no one dared to mention. Each and every heavens chosen had to rely on a grandmaster at the 3rd level of Yuanfu in order to enter the Great Inheritance Hall. And after that, they were actually chased out of the Ascendant's Great Inheritance Hall. Even the final part of the inheritance was given to Zhan Chan by a grandmaster at the 3rd level of Yuanfu. Because of this, Zhan Chan was even injured. These matters were only known by those who were directly involved in the matter. The truth might be buried in the sands of time. Because even if Bai Lu Jing and Bai Lu Yi did it for the sake of Qin Wentian, they wouldn't publicize this matter. Although this would allow Qin Wentian's name to resound throughout the entire moon continent, at the same time, it would also push Qin Wentian to the teeth of the storm, becoming the target of public criticism. Don't forget, even if he gave up the inheritance, he still had another ancient tome of divine inscriptions. To grandmasters, the value of the tome left behind by the Ascendant was even more valuable compared to the cultivation art. But now where was Qin Wentian? Bai Lu Yi stood at the top of the pavilion, gazing into the horizons. In the ruins of the refinement grounds, beneath the billowing yellow sands, a dilapidated palace could be seen. Qin Wentian sat cross-legged inside, with a puppet in front of him. This puppet was none other than the golden-armored king puppet. Qin Wentian naturally knew how to refine puppets. Now that this puppet had no master, how could he waste it? After all, this was a 4th-rank puppet. In Qin Wentian's eyes, a puppet was a divine weapon. Refining a puppet was the same as refining a divine weapon. After a divine weapon was refined, it could be controlled by one's will. If it was a divine weapon, one could use their will to control the sword, killing enemies from 1,000 miles away. And after refining a puppet, It would also be controlled by the will of its master, unless the will of the puppet was forcefully erased by an expert from the outside. Hence, Qin Wentian first repaired the defensive divine inscriptions of the puppet. In addition, the material used to refine this puppet had an extremely high defense. Unless it was attacked by a heavenly dipper sovereign, it would be extremely difficult to erase the defensive divine inscriptions. After all, it wasn't easy to find someone like him who could defend against the reverse divine inscriptions. After a long period of time, the golden-armored king puppet stood up. Its eyes abruptly flashed with a golden light, as though it was a golden sword, capable of piercing through the eyes of those who looked at it. A faint smile flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. With an intention of his will, he kept the puppet into his interspatial ring. Since this puppet was controlled by his will, he could naturally keep it in his interspatial ring. But if it was controlled by someone else, he would have to erase that person's will before he could keep it. After refining the puppet, Qin Wentian wasn't in a hurry to leave. He closed his eyes and started to carefully sense the changes in his body. After closing his eyes, a ray of light shot out from the center of his brows, after which a golden vertical eye appeared there. When this eye opened, everything in the outside world was imprinted into his mind, and at the same time it was imprinted into his heart. In that instant, Qin Wentian's heart trembled. Both of his eyes opened, and at the same time, a resplendent beam of golden light shot out from them. The beam of light swept past, penetrating through the hearts of others. There seemed to be a mandate emanating from his eyes. His eyes could actually release the willpower that he had comprehended. Chapter 274. After the incident at the secret grounds of divine inscriptions, the transcendent powers of the moon continent once again returned to their former transcendent powers. Not only that, the level of danger at the secret grounds of divine inscriptions this time around far surpassed all the previous ones. Within the secret grounds of divine inscriptions, many of the transcendent powers had fallen. According to those who survived, they only managed to walk out alive after the secret grounds of divine inscriptions had been destroyed. If not, they would have been trapped there forever. Undoubtedly, the Pill Emperor Hall had become the victor in the eyes of the crowd, because only Zhan Chan, the chosen of the Pill Emperor Hall, had obtained the legendary inheritance of the Ascendant. This was a topic of discussion for countless people. Zhan Chan was originally ranked number 11 on the Heavenly Fate rankings, and was only one rank away from entering the top 10. After receiving the inheritance this time around, the Pill Emperor Hall had placed even more importance on him. Many people were speculating when Zhan Chan would attempt to enter the top 10 of the Heavenly Fate rankings. To Zhan Chan, the difference of a single rank was extremely important. The meaning behind the top 10 and the top 11 was completely different. In the Pill Emperor Hall, Zhan Chan didn't seem to be excited at all. In fact, there was even a hint of sorrow on his face. Zhan Chan, since your fate is already determined, don't be sad. Everything will be gone with the wind. At this moment, Zhan Chen's master consoled him. However, Qing Yu's death was all because of my incompetence. I failed to protect her. Zhan Chen sighed. After which, a cold sword light erupted forth from his eyes. Qing Yu's death. Half of the responsibility lies with that Grandmaster Divine Inscriptionist. If it weren't for him, Qing Yu wouldn't have died in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. I will personally kill that person. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. The killing intent in Zhan Chen's eyes wasn't fake at all. That was the killing intent he had towards Qin Wentian, an extremely intense killing intent. He originally wanted Qin Wentian to die. Not to mention the fact that Qin Wentian had witnessed his secret. Qin Wentian had severely injured him in the Great Hall of the Trial Grounds and thrown him out of the Great Hall. In the end, Qin Wentian had abandoned the legacy book and given it to them. Qin Wentian deserved to die. Abandon the item Qin Wentian had abandoned, he had to sacrifice half his life before he could snatch it away. Eventually, he returned to the Pill Emperor Hall safely. How could Qin Wentian not die? Since you have the heart, you will personally avenge Qingyue. Kill this brat. Zhan Chan, as a heaven's chosen of the Pill Emperor Hall, there was naturally no need for him to worry too much about matters of revenge. Zhan Chen would definitely be able to accomplish it. Master Martial Uncle, I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. At this moment, a beautiful maiden beside them spoke, causing Zhan Chen's gaze to land on her. Emo Qingcheng, under the tutelage of her martial uncle Luo He, had improved by leaps and bounds, regardless of cultivation or alchemy. Not only that, Emo Qingcheng's martial uncle wouldn't be stingy in the slightest, as long as it was beneficial to her cultivation. Okay, you can leave first, Zhan Chen will send you off. Luo He nodded her head lightly. No need, Senior Zhan Chen still needs to cultivate, there's no need to waste time. Emo Qingcheng's voice was as cold as ever, as cold as ever. After speaking, she bowed slightly to Luo He before departing alone. Bai Fei, who was following beside Emo Qingcheng, cast a deep glance at Zhan Chen, her beautiful eyes flickering with a hint of emotion. Zhan Chen, the most outstanding young man in the Pill Emperor Hall below the Heavenly Dipper realm. He was always so cultured and elegant, approachable and approachable. However, Bai Fei knew that it was impossible for her and Zhan Chen to be together. In her eyes, Zhan Chen was a lofty and lofty existence, unreachable. In the past there was Qing Yu and now there was Emo Qingcheng. Bai Fei sighed in her heart as she chased after Emo Qingcheng. Not long after, she caught up to her. Staring at the cold and beautiful back view of Emo Qingcheng, Bai Fei's beautiful eyes flickered. Her lips moved as though she wanted to say something, but in the end, no words came out. She knew that the divine inscriptionist Zhan Chen was referring to was none other than Qin Wentian. Zhan Chen wanted to kill Qin Wentian. If she were to tell Emo Qingcheng that Qin Wentian had come to the moon continent, and had even entered the refinement grounds, how would Emo Qingcheng react? However, she chose to remain silent. If Senior Zhan Chen killed Qin Wentian, wouldn't that mean that there would no longer be any possibility between him and Emo Qingcheng? In the White Deer Institute, atop a pavilion, Bai Lui stared at the lake water in front of her, her heart filled with worry. A month had already passed, but Qin Wentian had yet to return. She was worried that Qin Wentian would be in danger. You're thinking about that fellow again. At this moment, a low laughter drifted over. Bai Lui turned her gaze over, rolling her eyes at her brother as she asked, "What are you talking about? You still don't want to admit it? During these few days you haven't been to the White Deer Cavern, and you haven't even cultivated." Bai Lu Jing stared at his sister as he laughed. "Even if your brother disappeared for a year and a half, you wouldn't be so worried. You're so powerful, what could possibly happen to you?" Bai Lui laughed. His cultivation base isn't high after all. Although he gave up on the inheritance scroll, if he really encountered those fellows, they would definitely not spare him. "Are you that unconfident in him?" Bai Lu Jing laughed. "You're too worried. You're right, that fellow has so many methods up his sleeves. Even if they wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be so easy." A relaxed smile appeared on Bai Lu Yi's face. Although she hadn't interacted with Qin Wentian for a long time, and his cultivation base was only at the 3rd level of Yuanfu, that fellow had a unique charisma that caused people to feel that he was extraordinary. It wouldn't be so easy to deal with him. Zhan Chen, Yang Fan, Zhao Lai and the rest were all heaven's chosen, but when they fought for the inheritance, they were all chased out of the Great Hall by him. But now our White Deer Institute is in trouble. A loathsome fellow has appeared. Bai Lu Jing stated in a depressed tone, causing Bai Lu Yi to be stunned. "What happened to the White Deer Institute? You should still remember what the elders said about the White Deer Institute, right?" Bai Lu Jing asked, his words causing Bai Lu Yi's heart to tremble. Of course she knew. She had even discussed this matter with Qin Wentian back in the training grounds. Qin Wentian had the Azure Emperor token in his hands. He was a descendant of the Azure Emperor. Of course, Bai Lu Yi replied. "A descendant from the D clan of the Azure Emperor has arrived, announcing that he wants to take over the White Deer Institute," Bai Lu Jing stated, his words causing Bai Lu Jing's beautiful eyes to freeze. The D clan of the Azure Emperor had arrived? Not only that, they wanted to take over the White Deer Institute? How could this be possible? What about Qin Wentian? Qin Wentian was the possessor of the Azure Emperor's token. Not only that, other than the possessor of the Azure Emperor's token, who else would know of the hidden Azure faction? Bai Lui suddenly felt that this matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. "When did he arrive?" Bai Lui asked. "Today." Not only that, he seems to be very clear about the current situation of our White Deer Institute. He even knows about you. A helpless smile could be seen on Bai Lu Jing's face. With regards to the Azure faction, it was just as Qin Wentian had guessed. Although they still followed the teachings of their ancestors, their feelings for the Azure faction had already faded. Especially so for the younger generation, which of them didn't have any feelings for the Azure faction? He knows about me? Bai Lui was dumbfounded. That fellow is extremely arrogant. The moment he arrived, he said that he wanted the entire White Deer Institute to listen to his commands. He said that he would take control of the White Deer Institute, and in order to compensate us, he would marry you. Bai Lu Jing laughed speechlessly. He already had no feelings for the Azure faction, and now that he saw such a ridiculous person, how could he have any good feelings? He only felt that it was ridiculous. Let's go take a look. Bai Lui spoke, following Bai Lu Jing as they left the area. Arriving at a courtyard in the White Deer Institute, there were several people gathered here, and the person in the lead wasn't an elder of the White Deer Institute. Instead, it was a young man clad in a long golden robe, exuding an aura of nobility. His countenance was filled with a faint trace of arrogance. Behind the young man, there was an old man quietly standing there, as though he didn't exist. However, it was precisely because of this that this old man was extraordinary. Upon seeing Bai Lui walking over, the young man's gaze swept over her. Her angelic countenance, fiery figure, she gave off an intense feeling of desire. The young man's eyes abruptly brightened as he laughed. You must be Little E? Little E? Bai Lui was dumbfounded, staring at the young man speechlessly. Even with their relationship, Qin Wentian had never referred to her in such a manner. This was the first time they met, yet this young man referred to her as Little E. Who might you be? Bai Lui asked. Di Cheng, I'm a direct descendant of the Azure faction. A direct descendant of the Azure Emperor. The young man's voice contained hints of arrogance. Bai Lui stared at him as she asked, Do you have the Azure Emperor token? This manor was located in the central region of the White Deer Institute, and the security here was extremely tight. Only core members of the Institute were allowed to enter. Hence Bai Lui didn't need to worry about her words leaking out. The Azure Emperor token is temporarily not in my hands, Di Cheng replied. He didn't expect Bai Lui to directly ask about the Azure Emperor token. Since you don't have the Azure Emperor token, how can you talk about the inheritance of the D clan? Bai Lui coldly replied. The Azure Emperor token is the symbol of the successor of the Azure Emperor. Bai Lui heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that Di Cheng was unable to take out the Azure Emperor token. Although she trusted Qin Wentian completely, the secret of the Azure faction wasn't known by many. She was afraid that if the young man could take out the Azure Emperor token, it would mean that Qin Wentian had lied to her. However, Di Cheng was unable to take out the Azure Emperor token. This indicated that the identity of the successor was extremely suspicious. Di Cheng laughed. The Azure faction has experienced too many trials and tribulations up till now. The Azure Emperor token has yet to be found, but the Azure faction can no longer remain silent. I came here with the identity of a descendant of the D clan, hoping that the White Deer Institute will follow the teachings of our ancestors and assist me in reviving the Azure faction. Just because you say you are, it means you are? Bai Lui bluntly replied. The hidden Azure faction has been hidden for many years. Only those with the Azure Emperor token would know of it. How did you know about the White Deer Institute? Chapter 275. Back then, the Azure Emperor Palace was one of the strongest powers in Granxia, with experts as common as the clouds. Among them, not everyone had the surname Di. There were disciples, successors, and even loyal protectors and servants of the Azure Emperor. Together, they formed the Azure faction. After the destruction of the Azure Emperor Palace, those who were most loyal to the Azure Emperor silently left, concealing themselves in various locations in Granxia, concealing their identities and even changing their original surnames. However, they all had a single mission. If one day there would be a person who could control the Azure Emperor Palace, that person would be the leader of the hidden factions of the Azure Emperor, allowing the Azure Emperor Palace to rise up once again. This was also the teachings of the White Deer Institute. But this wait was simply too long. For thousands of years, such a person had yet to appear. The inheritances of the hidden bloodlines grew longer and longer, and their loyalty to the Azure Emperor naturally grew weaker and weaker. Right now, the only thing binding them was the teachings of their ancestors. Since there was the Azure Emperor token, there would naturally be a person in charge of it. This person was none other than the Azure Emperor's foster son, as well as his personal disciple. He took after the Azure Emperor's surname, and his bloodline was the most direct line of descent. The mission of selecting a successor for the Azure Emperor also fell onto the shoulders of this bloodline. Maybe this bloodline was the most loyal to the Azure Emperor. The person behind Di Cheng couldn't help but to berate, impudent. This person had been silent all this while, as though he didn't exist. But now that he had spoken, his tone was extremely imposing. Di Cheng laughed as he waved his hands. Little E is still young. There's no need to worry about it. Since you want to hear the truth, I'll tell you. Currently, the person in charge of the Azure Emperor token has been captured by the 9 Mystical Palace, and there's a possibility that they will force out the Azure Emperor token. At that time, all the hidden factions would be exposed, and the only thing waiting for you all would be destruction. This old man has also heard that only the person in charge of the Azure Emperor token would know of our whereabouts. Since you guys don't have the Azure Emperor token, how would you know? Can I understand that you have already gone against the teachings of your ancestors? At this moment, an elder from the White Deer Institute spoke. Although his tone was calm, his words were filled with sharpness and sharpness. I'll explain this to you later. Di Cheng smiled as he continued. The White Deer Institute is the first hidden faction I want to unify. I will definitely not mistreat the White Deer Institute. In the future, Little E will be my wife, and the White Deer Institute will become the leader of the Azure faction. Who said I want to be your wife? Bai Luizhen didn't expect Qin Wentian to be so shameless, acting as though he was doing her a favor. Di Cheng's eyes brightened as he watched Qin Wentian's actions. Let's not talk about this matter for now. Young Master Di Cheng, why don't you take a rest first? An elder spoke calmly, not wanting to continue the conversation. Knowing that it was impossible to take down the White Deer Institute in one go, Di Cheng nodded in agreement. After making arrangements for Di Cheng, the White Deer Institute naturally couldn't avoid a discussion. Most of the core members of White Deer Academy were gathered within the hall. The 4 patriarchs, 9 elders, the masters of the various halls, and the outstanding juniors of the direct line of descent were gathered here. The person in the lead was none other than Bai Luyi's great-grandfather, the current administrator of the White Deer Institute. This old man had white hair and a white beard, but he still had the spirit of a dragon and a tiger. What's your attitude towards this matter? The old man calmly stated. I don't agree. Our White Deer Institute is already a branch of power. Why should we be controlled by others? Not only that, this person isn't even able to take out the Azure Emperor token. An elder from the White Deer Institute coldly stated. This matter needs to be discussed at length. After all, the ancestral teachings are still there. But the identity of this person is still worth investigating. I'll listen to elder brother. The last elder tapped on the armrest of his chair as he added, let's seek the opinions of the juniors. Bai Lui quietly observed the attitudes of the crowd. What made her surprised was that her great-grandfather and the other elders didn't seem to agree with the idea. Not to mention the juniors, the majority of them didn't seem to agree. Thinking of Qin Wentian, Bai Lui couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed like that fellow's path wouldn't be so smooth. Little E, what's your opinion? An elder asked Bai Lui. This elder was none other than her grandfather. Bai Lui pondered for a moment before replying. I don't know what the other elders and elders think about the current White Deer Institute. Do you wish for the White Deer Institute to remain like this, hiding within the Moon Continent? Or do you wish for the Azure Emperor Palace to be able to stand tall in Granxia one day? If it's the former, there's no need for us to discuss this further. The various elders and elders froze for a moment before smiles appeared on their faces. We're already old, we can't even compare to Little Yi's words. Bai Luyi's great-grandfather laughed. That's right. First of all, what's our attitude? If there's someone who can allow us to stand tall in Granxia with the identity of the Azure Emperor Palace, this means that the strength of the Azure Emperor Palace wouldn't lose out to any of the major powers in Granxia. I have no objections, an elder stated. Bai Lui discovered that the majority of those who wished for the White Deer Institute to stand tall in Granxia, with the identity of the Azure Emperor Palace, Only those who were more conservative still wished for the White Deer Institute to remain like this. Little Yi, you heard it yourself. Continue with your thoughts. Bai Luyi's great-grandfather looked at her as a gentle smile appeared on his face. Great-grandfather, it seems that everyone is unwilling to accept the current status of the White Deer Institute. Bai Luyi smiled. Ultimately, the Granxia Empire belongs to the transcendent powers. Although the White Deer Institute is extraordinary, the 4 transcendent powers of the Moon continent are still able to suppress us, the old man stated. Since we're unwilling, let's find an opportunity. Bai Luyi nodded. You agreed to submit to Di Chang? The white-bearded old man asked in bewilderment. No, I believe that the successor of the Azure Emperor, as well as the one with the Azure Emperor token, would definitely be someone extraordinary. A sweet smile appeared on Bai Luyi's face, as a bright light flickered in her eyes. Di Chang's appearance might not be a bad thing for Qin Wentian. At the very least, Di Chang had shaken the peace of the White Deer Institute, causing them to have to weigh the pros and cons in their hearts. The white-bearded old man stared at Bai Luyi in bewilderment. Why was this last so confident in the successor of the Azure Emperor? However, Di Chang said that the person in charge of the Azure Emperor token has been captured by the 9 Mystical Palace. In the future, the Azure Emperor token would fall into someone else's hands. Great-grandfather, do you believe his words? Bai Luyi asked, her words causing the old man to smile as he nodded. I don't. Alright, all of you can leave now. Remember, do not mention anything about the Azure faction to outsiders. If not, don't blame the clan for treating you coldly. The old man's voice was filled with authority. This matter was too serious. If news of it leaked out, the White Deer Institute would be in grave danger. The people here were all core members of the White Deer Institute, yet he still reminded them, worried that they wouldn't be able to keep their mouths shut. Bai Luyi and the rest departed. After that, although the people of the White Deer Institute were as warm to Di Chang as before, they only feigned civility. They believed that Di Chang might really be a descendant of the Di clan, or else he wouldn't have known so many secrets. However, Di Chang could also tell that although the people of the White Deer Institute were warm and courteous to him, they didn't have the slightest intention of supporting him. In fact, he couldn't even meet with the elders of the White Deer Institute. However, the skin of this Di Chang was truly thick enough. He continued to stay in the White Deer Institute, pestering Bai Luyi from time to time. This caused the people of the White Deer Institute to suspect that even if Di Chang was a descendant of the Di clan, would the Di clan really dare to entrust their future to such a pompous character? Until one day, another young man arrived at the White Deer Institute. Only then did the White Deer Institute realize that they were wrong. This young man was named Di Feng. This young man was completely different from the pompous Di Chang. He was calm and steady, and although his age wasn't too far apart from Di Chang, he exuded an air of leadership, exuding an extraordinary aura. Not only that, the strength of this young man far surpassed Di Chang. After his arrival, Di Chang no longer dared to claim that he was the successor of the Di clan. This made the people of the White Deer Institute understand. Di Chang was merely a scout, while Di Feng was the true successor of the Di clan. After comparing Di Feng and Di Chang, the people of the White Deer Institute suddenly felt that Di Feng was too outstanding. Maybe he could really lead the entire Azure faction. In the training grounds of the White Deer Institute, there were many spectators watching the 2 young men on the stage. These 2 were none other than Di Feng and Bai Lujing. Bai Lujing was at a disadvantage under Di Feng's attacks, retreating continuously. His eyes gleamed with sharpness as he stared at the young man in front of him. You should have another name, right? Di Feng flicked his sleeves as he smiled at Bai Lujing. Brother Jing's strength is extraordinary. I'm sure you'll be able to advance a few ranks in the heavenly fate rankings. I do indeed have another name, Emperor Azure. Emperor Azure, Emperor Azure. Bai Lujing murmured as he laughed, so it's you. Only today did I finally understand the true meaning behind the name Emperor Azure. The old men by the side also had their eyes gleaming with sharpness. This young man was none other than Emperor Azure. Emperor Azure. Bai Luyi also had a look of shock on her face. The person ranked number 5 on the Heavenly Fate rankings was none other than Emperor Azure. Emperor Azure ranked number 5 on the Heavenly Fate rankings. His name shook Granxia. However, how many people knew that his real name was Di Feng? Emperor Azure, Azure Emperor. So that's how it is, Bai Luyi's grandfather murmured. He also understood the meaning behind this name. However, even such a character like Emperor Azure hadn't obtained the Azure Emperor's inheritance or the Azure Emperor token. In truth, this was also one of Difeng's regrets. It wasn't that he didn't have the ability, it was because of the environment he grew up in. From a young age, he was brought away by his master to roam the world, and when he returned, he was already at Yuanfu. However, Difeng didn't care. Even if he didn't obtain the Azure Emperor token, he would still lead the Azure faction. Little E, do you think this young man can lead the Azure faction back to glory? Bai Luyi's grandfather smiled, causing Bai Luyi to be stunned. She suddenly had a thought. The people of the D clan were too smart. First, they sent Di Chong here, causing the White Deer Institute to have an extremely bad impression of him. After that, they sent the number 5 ranker Difeng to appear. With such a contrast, it was very easy for people to acknowledge Difeng. Bai Luyi didn't know how to reply, but at this moment, a figure walked over from afar. Missy Qin Wentian has returned. Bai Luyi's beautiful eyes froze for a moment before a smile appeared on her face. That fellow had finally returned. Chapter 276. After Qin Wentian obtained the ancient manual, he immersed himself in comprehending it. At the same time, he sensed the transformations in his body. This closed-door seclusion lasted for a total of 2 months, causing him to lose track of time. In these 2 months, he deeply felt the power of his bloodline. At the same time, he also experienced the profoundness of the ancient manual left behind by the Gold Element Celestial Lord. The Gold Element Celestial was truly an extraordinary character. Regardless of his attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions or his cultivation base, he was extremely powerful. In fact, Qin Wentian was thinking that although the other inheritance he left behind had been discarded by him, it should still be extremely powerful. However, Qin Wentian had no regrets. He believed in his intuition. If it wasn't for the fact that he had opened his third eye and personally witnessed that the golden armored giants weren't puppets, he wouldn't have doubted the inheritance. But now that he saw the 9 golden armored giants guarding the inheritance like puppets, and even sacrificing their lives to control the golden armored giants, Qin Wentian couldn't help but doubt the authenticity of the ancient manual. Hence he gave up. In these 2 months, his strength had risen by leaps and bounds. Regardless of his attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, the current him was more and more confident in himself. Most probably, it wouldn't be too long before he would be able to establish a foothold in the Moon continent. He wouldn't be like now, unable to do anything he wanted. This was also the feeling Qin Wentian had after coming to the Moon continent. That sense of urgency caused him to constantly think of ways to increase his strength. In truth, his cultivation base was already outstanding enough. He stepped onto the path of cultivation at the age of 16 and awakened his 3 astral souls, all originating from the 5th heavenly layer. Up until now, he had never met anyone who could match up to him. Stepping into Yuanfu before the age of 18, his name shook the entire Chu country. Not only that, he even managed to determine the ruler of the Chu country. This was an achievement that many would never be able to achieve in their entire lives. And now he wasn't even 19 yet. His current cultivation base was at the 4th level of Yuanfu. During his closed-door seclusion, he broke through again, stepping into the 4th level of Yuanfu from the 3rd level. His Yuanfu pool grew stronger, and his insights into the Tao of martial Tao grew deeper. Not far away, a beautiful silhouette walked over. Although Bai Luyi wasn't as beautiful as Mo Qingcheng, she gave off a sense of comfort when looking at her. She was clean, refreshing, pure, and sexy. Every time people saw her, their eyes would light up. "You rascal, you still know to come back." Bai Luyi glared coquettishly at Qin Wentian. In front of Qin Wentian, she didn't have to feign coldness anymore. She was more and more casual, occasionally revealing her feminine side, adding to her charm. Qin Wentian stared at Bai Luyi as a smile flashed across his face. "From your tone, why do I feel as though this is my home? In your dreams?" Bai Luyi glared at him. "How was your harvest this time around?" "I've gained a lot. Do you want to take a look at the Ascendant's ancient scroll?" Qin Wentian stared at Bai Luyi with a teasing look in his eyes. And indeed, upon hearing his words, Bai Luyi's beautiful eyes instantly lit up. The ancient scroll of the Ascendant, to a genius divine inscriptionist, was simply too attractive. If the people of the Moon continent were to learn of this, it would definitely cause many fourth-ranked grandmasters to go crazy over it. Forget it, you were the one who snatched the inheritance, it should belong to you, Bai Lui replied after some thought. I didn't say I would give it to you, Qin Wentian laughed, causing Bai Lui to glare at him fiercely. Was he joking with her? I'll lend it to you for a few days, it won't affect my comprehension. Qin Wentian shrugged, causing Bai Lui's beautiful eyes to freeze. Staring at the teasing look on Qin Wentian's face, she involuntarily punched him in the chest. Qin Wentian naturally wouldn't be stingy with Bai Lui. This beautiful young lady had used her own body to block an attack from Zhu Sha when they were fighting for the inheritance. Where's Big Bro Chu Meng and Fatty? Qin Wentian couldn't help but ask when he saw little rascal running over. The two of them are currently in a frenzy, roaming all over the place to temper themselves. During these 2 months, they've already accumulated countless battle achievements in the Hell Arena. Bai Lui's words caused Qin Wentian's heart to tremble. Fatty finally wasn't lazy anymore. Lung Ning's death must have been a huge blow to him. In the vast Granxia Empire, experts were as common as the clouds. If one didn't have enough strength, they could only watch helplessly as the heart-wrenching things happened. If Qin Wentian had his current strength back then, the Lung clan wouldn't have been able to touch a single strand of hair on Lung Ning's head. Yen Tai, whom the Lung clan tried to curry favor with, would be easily killed by the current him. Qin Wentian, come with me. I have something important to tell you. Bai Lui's countenance turned solemn, as she brought Qin Wentian to a secret location. However, it wasn't the central region. Although Qin Wentian and Bai Lui had a good relationship, as long as Qin Wentian wasn't a core member of the White Deer Institute, he wouldn't be able to enter that place. Di Feng and Di Chong were exceptions, because they knew the greatest secret of the White Deer Institute, the Azure faction. Although Qin Wentian also knew about it, before Qin Wentian decided to lay his cards on the table, Bai Lui naturally wouldn't tell the White Deer Institute on his behalf. It was up to Qin Wentian to make the decision himself. What's the matter? Qin Wentian couldn't help but ask when he saw Bai Lui pulling him to a secluded location. These few days a group of people came to the White Deer Institute. One of them is named Di Feng and he has another name, Emperor Azure. He's ranked number 5 on the Heavenly Fate rankings, and is currently in the training grounds of the White Deer Institute. They are from the Di clan, a direct descendant of the Azure Emperor. Bai Lui's words instantly caused Qin Wentian's countenance to turn heavy. Direct descendant of the Azure Emperor, the Di clan. Qin Wentian instantly thought of the headmaster of the Emperor Star Academy, Di. That old man should still be in the 9 Mystical Palace, right? Qin Wentian wondered if the 9 Mystical Palace had managed to kill him. As he thought of this, Qin Wentian's thirst for power grew even more intense. They know that the White Deer Institute is one of the hidden branches of the Azure Emperor. Their purpose in coming here is to gain control of the White Deer Institute and revive the Azure Emperor Palace, Bai Lui stated, her words causing many thoughts to appear in Qin Wentian's heart. After obtaining the Azure Emperor token, he knew that his path to reclaim the Azure faction wouldn't be smooth. Now that the Di clan had appeared, he couldn't help but wonder what their stance would be. If they knew that the Azure Emperor token was in his hands, what would their attitude be? Without the Azure Emperor token, do you think the White Deer Institute would approve of them? Qin Wentian asked in a heavy voice. These people have some tricks up their sleeves. First, they sent the Silk Pants Di Chong over, causing the White Deer Institute to have a bad impression of him. And after that, Di Feng appeared, causing the elders of the White Deer Institute to have a good impression of Di Feng. If they really saw hope in him, I think the White Deer Institute might really agree to their request. Bai Lui continued. As for their explanation regarding the Azure Emperor token, they said that the protector of the Azure Emperor token had been captured by the 9 Mystical Palace. They were worried that the secret of the Azure faction would be leaked, and this caused the White Deer Institute to change their plans. Qin Wentian contemplated for a moment after hearing Bai Lui's words. This matter was a challenge to him, but at the same time it was also an opportunity. The people from the Di clan had helped him break through the layers of paper, causing the White Deer Institute to have the intention of reviving the Azure Emperor Palace. Next, the question was who would be in charge of the Azure faction. After Senior De passed the Azure Emperor token to me, he was captured by the 9 Mystical Palace because of me. I believe that even in death, Senior D wouldn't divulge the secret of the Azure faction, Qin Wentian stated, his heart heavy. It seemed like he had no choice but to bring his plans forward. The White Deer Institute, the first battle he would have to succeed. What do you plan to do next? Bai Lui asked Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian smiled when he saw the seriousness in Bai Lui's eyes. Don't worry, even if Di Feng from the D clan fought with me, the victor would still be mine. So what if he was ranked number 5 on the Heavenly Fate rankings? Very soon, he would have the confidence to be on par with Di Feng. Not only that, if he was given more time, in a year or 2 at most, he would become the most dazzling ranker on the Heavenly Fate rankings. This was his conviction and also his ambition. Let's go. I'll impart the ancient scroll of the Ascendant to you. Qin Wentian laughed. Bai Lui also smiled as she stared at his handsome countenance. She believed that Qin Wentian would definitely win, no matter what challenges he had to face. Rank number 11 Zhan Chan, number 18 Yang Fan, Zhao Lai, Hua Feng and Qin Wentian. Didn't they already snatch the inheritance right under their noses? So what if he was ranked number 5? In a place extremely far away from the moon continent, there was an ancient city where humans and demonic beasts coexisted, the Celestial Lake Palace. At this moment, the palace mistress of the Celestial Lake Palace was respectfully standing in the middle of the great hall, gazing at the peerless beauty seated before her. Fairy Qingmei lazily laid there, her beautiful eyes flickering with a demonic light. Her jade-like hands wrapped on the chair as she asked in a low voice, "That old fellow, can't he stay idle any longer?" The news I received was that currently the 2 major powers have already divided into 2 factions. No one is able to suppress the other. The palace mistress calmly replied. Who would have thought that even before they could rise up, there would already be a worm growing within them. Even before the Azure Emperor token was issued, they already wanted to seize power? Fairy Qingmei's smile was filled with a trace of coldness. Seems like that's what they're thinking. During these years they've gradually grown stronger and stronger, with many geniuses emerging from their ranks. Right now, Di Feng has already arrived at the White Deer Institute in the Moon Continent. The palace mistress of the Celestial Lake Palace seemed to be extremely familiar with the happenings in the Moon Continent. How are things going with Qing and that little fellow? Will that lass's heart be moved? A gentle smile involuntarily appeared on Fairy Qingmei's face as she thought of Qing. She should be fine. Master should know of Qing temperament. She's always cold and indifferent. It would be extremely difficult to make her enter the mortal world. The palace mistress bitterly smiled as she continued. As for that little fellow, he's not bad at all. Oh, Fairy Qingmei's gaze froze. It's rare for you to have such a high evaluation of him. Since this is the case, why don't you send some people out to take a look? Don't let that little fellow be too isolated. It's fine if nothing happens, but if there really is a conflict, at the very least I should let them know my stance. Chapter 277. After Qin Wentian passed the scroll to Bai Lui immediately immersed herself in it, forgetting everything else. She had always been infatuated with divine inscriptions. Now that she saw the profound Tao of divine inscriptions of a ascendant, she was like Qin Wentian back then, unable to extricate herself. The gold element ascendant's understanding of divine inscriptions, as well as the various combinations of divine inscriptions, were far superior compared to the White Deer Institute. What made Bai Lui even more moved was that within the scroll, there were many powerful 4th-ranked divine inscriptions, 4th-ranked formations, 4th-ranked weaponsmithing techniques, and 4th-ranked puppetry. Sadly, she didn't have that level of attainment yet. She couldn't comprehend it and could only comprehend it bit by bit. After Qin Wentian met with Chu Mang and the rest, he once again entered closed-door seclusion, staying with Bai Lui in the White Deer Cavern. Little rascal naturally stayed by his side as well. In truth, Qin Wentian originally wanted to stay in the desert for a longer period of time. But when he thought of how worried Bai Lui and Fan Lu would be, he hurriedly returned. Now that there was a chance to cultivate together with Bai Lui, exchanging insights, it was a wonderful thing. However, Di Qing's mood wasn't that wonderful. If the D clan wanted to gain full control of the White Deer Institute, other than acknowledging them, they naturally had to maintain a good relationship with the institute. And Defeng, who had the potential to become the future leader of the Azure faction, was undoubtedly the most suitable person to do such a thing. If the White Deer Institute truly acknowledged him, they would naturally be willing to help him. In the world of cultivation, after benefits, relationships would naturally be the most important. As such, Defeng had been staying in the White Deer Institute as a guest for the past few days. At the same time, he would visit the residences of the various elders and elders. Occasionally, he would interact with the younger generation as well, and the White Deer Institute's impression of Defeng was getting better and better. Dicheng, on the other hand, wasn't feeling too good. Those from the White Deer Institute didn't have a good impression of him. He was always idling around, and now that he heard that Bai Lui was cultivating with a young man, how could he be in a good mood? Is little E still in closed-door seclusion? At this moment Dicheng asked. That girl. Bai Lui's father shook his head. He knew that ever since Qin Wentian had returned, Bai Lui had been stuck together with him. A grown girl couldn't be kept at home. He didn't know what was going on, and naturally assumed that Bai Lui and Qin Wentian were together. However, he didn't object. After all, he was quite fond of Qin Wentian. At the very least, he was much better than Dicheng. No matter what, they were both from the D clan. How could there be such a huge disparity between Dicheng and Defeng? Father, it seems like your daughter is about to be abducted. Bai Lu Jing, who was standing at the side, laughed, as though he was intentionally speaking to Dicheng. Sure enough, Dicheng's expression changed slightly as he asked, Qin Wentian, who is he? How is he worthy of Xiao Yi? Dicheng continued to address Bai Lui as little E. Bai Lui's father and Bai Lu Jing were extremely unhappy, but they couldn't be bothered to correct him. After all, he was a guest. It doesn't matter if he's worthy or not, as long as little E likes him. Bai Lu Jing intentionally provoked Dicheng. And indeed, Dicheng's countenance changed slightly. Master Missy, he's out. At this moment a maid came to report. Bai Lui's father's eyes brightened as he laughed. That lass, she's finally willing to come out. I'll go take a walk first. Dicheng bid his farewell, causing Bai Lui and Bai Lui to glance at each other. Bai Lui's father then turned to Bai Lu Jing. You should go take a look as well. Right. Bai Lu Jing nodded his head as he stood up and departed, heading in the direction of the White Deer Cavern. Not long after Qin Wentian and Bai Lui exited the White Deer Cavern, there were already so many people in front of them, causing them to feel somewhat depressed. He's Dicheng. Bai Lui whispered to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian swept his gaze over, instantly seeing Dicheng's cultivation base, the 5th level of Yuanfu. Based on Dicheng's age, this cultivation base wasn't anything special. After which, Qin Wentian saw the 2 elders of the White Deer Institute also passing by. Qin Wentian wanted to see if he could see their cultivation bases, but to his dismay, Qin Wentian discovered that he couldn't. This made Qin Wentian understand that even after he opened his third eye, he could only see the cultivation bases of Yuanfu cultivators. The elders of the White Deer Institute should all be at the Heavenly Dipper realm, hence he couldn't see through them. Little E, I've missed you so much these days. Dicheng smiled at Bai Lui, causing Qin Wentian to be taken aback. This fellow was truly a genius. Qin Wentian now believed that the reason why the D clan sent Dicheng here first to give the White Deer Institute a bad impression wasn't because Dicheng was faking it. Dicheng was truly such a person. Bai Lui's countenance changed when she heard Dicheng's words. Seeing Qin Wentian winking at her, she couldn't help but feel even angrier. Dicheng, please call me by my name in the future, Bai Lui stated in a depressed tone. After which, she hooked her arm around Qin Wentian's, pulling Qin Wentian along. She glared at Qin Wentian viciously. Who asked this bastard to make fun of her? Qin Wentian smiled bitterly. He was being used as a shield by Bai Lui. Noticing the gazes of the crowd, Qin Wentian could only smile bitterly. Right now, it was impossible for those from the White Deer Institute to not misunderstand. He and Bai Lui often cultivated together, and although there was nothing between them, those from the White Deer Institute wouldn't think so. Qin Wentian? Dicheng blocked Qin Wentian's path of retreat. His eyes narrowed as a smile appeared on his face, yet it gave off a sinister feeling. You're blocking my way. Qin Wentian smiled as he looked at Dicheng. I know. Dicheng nodded his head. I heard that you're an unaffiliated cultivator with an average cultivation background. However, your attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions aren't bad, and you're a third-rank Divine Inscriptionist. Qin Wentian furrowed his brows. This Di Cheng was extremely clear about his background, and Qin Wentian's countenance was as calm as ever. Although Divine Inscriptionists are respected by others, that's only because they have value. They can help others forge divine weapons and puppets. Even for a powerful Divine Inscriptionist, if he doesn't know how to forge divine weapons, his status will still be limited. After all, it's impossible to rely on divine inscriptions to battle. Ultimately, for cultivators, what matters most is one's cultivation base. Di Cheng slowly explained, his words causing Qin Wentian to be speechless. This fellow blocked his path and said so much. Was he trying to show how outstanding he was? But the problem was, this Di Cheng himself wasn't that outstanding? Naturally, whether he was outstanding or not depended on who he was compared to. Di Cheng knew that he didn't have the qualifications to compete with Di Feng. But as for the person in front of him, he definitely had to suppress him. In fact, although Di Cheng appeared to be a silk pants, he wasn't stupid. He knew why the Di clan had sent him here first, and he understood his mission. He also knew that he wanted to woo Bai Lu Yi not only because of her beauty, but also because of her status. As long as he married her, his status in the White Deer Institute would be completely different. And if he succeeded, the Di clan would definitely be extremely satisfied with him. Are you done? Qin Wentian stared at Di Cheng. His tone indifferent. It was as though he didn't even place Di Cheng in his eyes. Such a situation caused the smile in Di Cheng's eyes to grow colder. Did you not understand what I meant? Qin Wentian saw that Di Cheng wasn't willing to let him off the hook, and his countenance also grew sharper. Two terrifying beams of light pierced into Di Cheng's eyes, and in an instant Di Cheng felt a sense of impending doom. He involuntarily retreated 2 steps, his countenance extremely unsightly to behold. Let's go. Qin Wentian spoke to Bai Lu Yi. Bai Lu Yi was like a young girl, quietly hugging his arm. This was a blatant show of flaunting, wanting Di Cheng to completely give up on her. Not far away, Bai Lu Yi's father and Bai Lu Jing both had bitter smiles on their faces as they witnessed this scene. Just like what Qin Wentian had predicted, the misunderstanding had deepened. Qin Wentian and Bai Lu Yi lifted their feet, only to see Di Cheng blocking their path once again. The aura of a 5th-level Yuanfu cultivator erupted forth. Since you don't understand what I meant, let me tell you. Get the hell out of the White Deer Institute. Di Cheng's aura grew even more domineering, suppressing Qin Wentian. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian's footsteps didn't stop. 2 beams of terrifying golden light shot out from his eyes, sweeping over Di Cheng. Di Cheng instantly felt an intense pain in his eyes, as though the pressure of death was pressing down on him. Qin Wentian's majesty was something that couldn't be profaned. Boom! A powerful force slammed into his mind, causing him to groan in pain. His face turned pale. Qin Wentian acted as though nothing had happened as he continued walking forwards. Yet another piercing gaze landed on Di Cheng, causing his countenance to turn even paler. Di Cheng coughed out a mouthful of blood as his countenance turned even paler. Busy. Di Cheng released his astral souls as astral light flashed. His entire body was enveloped by a layer of mysterious energy as he glared at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian had already arrived in front of him. Stretching out his palms, he slammed out with his palms. Instantly, terrifying divine inscriptions intertwined with each other, transforming into a terrifying great rock. Di Cheng howled in rage as the claws of the great rock latched onto his chest. After which, he soared through the air and was flung out of the way. Stop! A cold voice rang out, only to see the silhouette of the old man behind Di Cheng trembling as he landed on Di Cheng's back. At the same time, he slammed out with his palms, destroying the great rock in the air. Di Cheng supported the body of the old man as he stood up. Blood could still be seen at the corners of his mouth, and the ropes around his chest were torn apart. His countenance was extremely grim. It's not impossible to battle using divine inscriptions. At the very least, I can kill as many as I want. So don't use your ignorance to show off. Qin Wentian indifferently stated. Di Cheng coughed out yet another mouthful of blood. Chapter 278. After Di Cheng found out that Bai Lui and Qin Wentian had a close relationship, he inquired about Qin Wentian from the White Deer Institute. Those from the White Deer Institute were all extremely familiar with Qin Wentian, and Di Cheng easily learned that Qin Wentian was a third-rank divine inscriptionist with a cultivation base at the third level of Yuanfu. Not only that, Qin Wentian didn't have any background, and only got acquainted with Bai Lui because of divine inscriptions. Hence, the conversation between Qin Wentian and Bai Lui came to light. Although divine inscriptionists were highly respected, they were only proficient in using divine inscriptions to forge weapons and formations. Very few divine inscriptionists could use divine inscriptions in combat. When both sides clashed, who would give them the time to inscribe divine inscriptions? However, Qin Wentian had used facts to tell them that there were indeed people who could use divine inscriptions in combat. And right now there was one. Not only that, it was as easy as flipping a palm to deal with him. The eyes of Bai Lu Jing and Bai Lu Yi's father brightened, as they gained a clearer understanding of Qin Wentian's attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. The path of divine inscriptions was as difficult as the martial path. Even if one had talent, they would need a long period of time to immerse themselves in it. There were many peak-tier third-rank divine inscriptionists who were already at the peak of the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. For someone as young as Qin Wentian to have such attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, to the extent that he could even use it in combat, he was definitely a demon-level genius. One could imagine that sooner or later, Qin Wentian would become a fourth-rank divine inscriptionist. At that time, his status would be completely different. If he could become a fourth-rank divine inscriptionist before the age of 20, the weight of his achievements wouldn't be any less than the names on the heavenly fate rankings. At the very least, in the Moon continent there had never been such a character. However, to advance from the third to the fourth level was akin to advancing from Yuanfu to Heavenly Dipper. It was a huge hurdle that couldn't be easily overcome. At this moment, none of them noticed that not far away, an elder from the White Deer Institute had a brilliant glow in his eyes when he saw Qin Wentian's display of divine inscriptions. In the future, please don't come and harass little E. You are really not worthy. Qin Wentian stared at Di Cheng as he emotionlessly stated. Disregarding Di Cheng's status, he was only speaking from the point of view of Bai Lu Yi's friend. Bai Lu Yi was a pure and beautiful young lady, gentle and generous, with outstanding talent. Her man was definitely not someone like Di Cheng. Di Cheng was truly not qualified. Di Cheng's face alternated between green and white. What else could he do after being humiliated by Qin Wentian? Any words he said had lost their persuasiveness. As for hoping that the elders of the Di family would stand up for him, that was impossible. The Di family had come to the White Deer Institute to build a good relationship with them. If he couldn't even handle his own matters, why would the elders of the Di family bully a guest of the White Deer Institute, Qin Wentian? Di Cheng could only admit defeat. Qin Wentian and Bai Lu Yi lifted their feet, preparing to leave. But before they could take a few steps, a gust of cold wind gusted over. Abruptly, another silhouette appeared, blocking Qin Wentian and Bai Lu Yi's path. Upon seeing this silhouette, Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened. What was going on today? Di Cheng blocked their path, and now there was another person blocking their path. Not only that, the person standing in front of him was actually an elder of the White Deer Institute. Although he didn't know who this person was, he had seen him a few times before. Grandpa Dong, what's wrong? Bai Lu Yi froze as she stared at the old man in front of her. Grandpa Tong was her elder, of the same generation as her grandfather. He was one of the 9 elders of the White Deer Institute, and could be considered as someone with great authority in the institute. His attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions were extremely high, and he was a 4th-ranked Grandmaster as well as a 4th-ranked Divine Inscriptionist. Not only that, he was also a Heavenly Dipper sovereign. Little brother Qin, I want to borrow something from you. Bai Lu Tong's eyes shone brightly as he stared at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian politely replied, What item does Senior want to borrow? The ancient scroll of the gold element ascendant. As the sound of Bai Lu Tong's voice faded, Qin Wentian's eyes narrowed as he involuntarily turned his gaze onto Bai Lu Yi. Had the news of what happened in the secret realm already circulated out? Before this, he had heard from Bai Lu Yi that those from the transcendent powers had all kept their mouths shut. Nobody in the outside world knew what happened in the secret realm. At this moment Bai Lui was also stunned. She didn't expect that Bai Lutong would ask Qin Wentian for this. The ancient scroll of the gold element ascendant was incomparably valuable. Qin Wentian had given it to her because their relationship was extraordinary, and because he trusted her. However, Bai Lutong and Qin Wentian didn't have any interactions at all. Asking for such a valuable item out of the blue, no one would be happy, including Qin Wentian. When Bai Lutong saw the expressions on their faces, he instantly understood that the ancient scroll of the gold element ascendant was most probably in Qin Wentian's hands. I heard that little brother Qin had some good fortune in the secret realm, and obtained the ancient scroll of the gold element ascendant. I have some knowledge in the field of divine inscriptions, and would little brother Qin please lend it to me to take a look? Bai Lutong continued. A golden light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. What status did Bai Lutong have? How valuable was the ancient scroll of the gold element ascendant? Although Bai Lutong said that he wanted to borrow it, in truth it was a form of robbery. Senior must be joking. Junior's cultivation base is too low. How could I obtain the ancient scroll of the gold element ascendant in the secret realm? Qin Wentian stared into Bai Lutong's eyes as he casually laughed. Even if Bai Lutong knew, he wouldn't admit to it. The ancient scroll of the gold element ascendant had too many implications, and there was a high possibility that it would attract calamity. Regardless of whether others knew of it or not, he couldn't admit to it no matter what. Is that so? But the information I received shouldn't be wrong. Bai Lutong similarly stared at Qin Wentian as he laughed. Treasures could bring calamity to people's hearts. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin Wentian had a good relationship with Bai Lui, and was a guest of the White Deer Institute, Bai Lutong wouldn't have wasted so much time talking nonsense with him and would have directly acted to snatch it away. Snatching treasures was a very common thing in the martial arts world. Senior must be mistaken. Qin Wentian continued laughing. At this moment Bai Lui and Bai Lujing definitely wouldn't leak the news out. Even if they did, the first person to receive the news wouldn't be Bai Lutong. In that case, it could only be those young men from the transcendent powers who intentionally leaked the news. Since this is the case, little brother Qin, can you allow me to inspect your interspatial ring? Bai Lutong stared at the interspatial ring on Qin Wentian's finger. Such words were already extremely presumptuous. Who didn't have their own secrets? The interspatial ring was Wu Xiu's foundation. How could he allow others to inspect it? Grandpa Tong, you're going too far, Bai Lui retorted. Although Bai Lutong was an elder, it was still too much to be so overbearing. Little E, this matter has nothing to do with you, Bai Lutong interjected. If it wasn't for Bai Lui, he wouldn't have been so polite to Qin Wentian. You actually think that this has nothing to do with me? Bai Luyi's voice was filled with mockery. Her hand was still holding onto Qin Wentian's arm. You should understand the importance of the ancient scroll. Now that it's right in front of me, Grandpa Tong has to obtain it no matter what. Bai Lutong stared straight into Bai Luyi's eyes as he spoke with a voice that could sever nails and sever iron. Bai Lutong, enough? At this moment, a silhouette walked over from afar. It was none other than the large-eyed elder whom Qin Wentian had met before. Bai Lutong's countenance didn't change when he saw the large-eyed elder. As a divine inscriptionist, the ancient scroll of the Ascendant was right in front of him. Such temptation was simply irresistible. Grand Elder, I've said enough. The large-eyed elder reprimanded. Don't forget, not long ago, Qin Wentian was still fighting for our White Deer Institute's ranking in the refinement grounds. Humph, Bai Lutong flicked his sleeves and departed. Evidently, he wouldn't let this matter rest so easily. Many thanks, Grand Elder. Qin Wentian clasped his hands to the large-eyed elder. You are a guest of the White Deer Institute. This is something I should do. If I've offended you in any way, please don't take it to heart, the large-eyed elder replied. After which, he turned to Bai Lui. Little E, take good care of little brother Qin. Bai Lui nodded her head in agreement, before leading Qin Wentian away. Qin Wentian once again returned to the grassy area behind the mountain. This place was quiet and tranquil, with a gentle breeze caressing his face, causing him to feel a sense of tranquility. Qin Wentian sat on the ground, staring at little rascal's snow-white body as a smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face. Stretching out his right hand, a sharp sword light appeared in his left hand, slicing through his palm, causing fresh blood to drip down. Little rascal, open your mouth. Qin Wentian spoke to Little Rascal. Yeah. Little Rascal shook its head. An expression of extreme reluctance could be seen in its adorable eyes, as though it was angrily glaring at Qin Wentian. Back then when you followed me, you must have sensed my aura when you met me. I know that my blood is useful to you, and even if I lose a bit of blood, there won't be any side effects. I'll replenish it very quickly. Don't worry. Qin Wentian knew that one of his bloodlines was the terrifying demonic blood, and was extremely useful to demonic beasts. Upon hearing Qin Wentian's words, Little Rascal opened its mouth. Be good. Qin Wentian dripped a drop of blood into Little Rascal's mouth, and indeed an instant later, a golden light flickered in its eyes as it ran to the side to sleep. Someone might have intentionally leaked the news. Aren't you worried at all? Bai Lu stared at the relaxed expression on Qin Wentian's face. Bai Lu Tong intercepting Qin Wentian had caused her to feel a sense of pressure. Even an elder of the Bai Lu Academy felt this way, let alone an outsider. Treasures bring calamity to people's hearts. What's the use of worrying? The only thing I can do is to grow stronger. Qin Wentian mumbled. Bai Lu nodded her head. You're right, although the predicament you're in might seem complicated. It's all because you're still too young, and your strength isn't strong enough. What did you say? Qin Wentian's eyes abruptly lit up, staring at Qin Wentian. Bai Lu stared at the expression on Qin Wentian's face. Bewilderment could be seen on her face. Qin Wentian didn't seem like someone who would get angry, right? You're still too young, and your strength isn't strong enough. If you could intimidate them, you wouldn't be in this predicament today, Bai Lu repeated. The previous sentence. Qin Wentian's heart pounded. Although the predicament you're in might seem complicated, it's all about simplicity, Bai Lu murmured, not understanding Qin Wentian's meaning. Yes, although the predicament you're in might seem complicated, it's all about simplicity. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath, feeling enlightened. He inclined his head, feeling the cool breeze blowing against his face, as he felt a sense of enlightenment. From simplicity to complexity, that's refinement. From complexity to simplicity, that's comprehension, Qin Wentian mumbled. Bai Lu's beautiful eyes flickered. She was completely at a loss. Only to see Qin Wentian squatting down, his palms slashing out in front of him. Instantly a straight line streaked through the air, containing a surge of energy within it. Bai Lu stared at the streak of light, her heart filled with bewilderment. She walked forward and similarly squatted down, infusing a strand of astral energy into it. Instantly a terrifying sharpness gushed forth as a beam of sword light pierced through the air, startling Bai Lu so much that she fell to the ground. Her beautiful eyes stared in shock at Qin Wentian as she stared at him. You broke through. Bai Lu's heart trembled, her voice filled with excitement. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head, exuding a carefree air. The confidence radiating from him grew even stronger. Chapter 279. Bai Lu's heart pounded wildly, her beautiful eyes unblinkingly fixed on Qin Wentian. Fourth level. Bai Lu's sexy lips twitched, her voice trembling slightly. In the Moon continent, fourth-ranked inscriptionists were at least in their 40s or 50s, and there were even some who were over 100 years old. These dazzling geniuses preferred to spend most of their time on the path of cultivation, and hence, there weren't that many demon-level inscriptionists. Qin Wentian was definitely one of a kind. He already had extraordinary attainments in the path of cultivation, and his talent in the Tao of divine inscriptions was even more monstrous. Not yet. Qin Wentian laughed. Bai Lu lightly patted her chest upon hearing his words. She didn't know how seductive this action was to men. Then why are you trying to scare me? Bai Lu glared at Qin Wentian. What grade of divine inscription is this? Qin Wentian laughed as he pointed to the inscription that appeared to be a straight line, but was actually imbued with a powerful sword might. Third-ranked. Bai Lu stared at Qin Wentian. Although he hadn't broken through to the fourth-ranked inscriptionist realm, the fact that he had such an achievement was already an astonishing feat. How many people could inscribe third-ranked inscriptions with just a lift of their hands? Even fourth-ranked inscriptionists couldn't do so. Inscribing third-ranked inscriptions with just a lift of your hands is indeed a major breakthrough. Bai Lu smiled. You've reminded me, from complexity to simplicity. Qin Wentian laughed. Before this, from the simplest divine inscription all the way up to the third level, the process of inscribing the divine inscriptions from the simplest to the complex. One stroke at a time, and more strokes at the end, the divine inscriptions would intertwine with each other, forming a brand new divine inscription. But now, if I want to step into the fourth level, the difficulty of inscribing a fourth-level divine inscription would be unimaginable. But of course, this is a stage that all divine inscriptionists have to go through. Isn't it the same for all divine inscriptionists? The inscribing of divine inscriptions is already exceedingly difficult. This is also the reason why so many geniuses are willing to cultivate. Although fourth-ranked inscriptionists are equivalent to heavenly dipper sovereigns, it's an undeniable fact that heavenly dipper sovereigns can easily kill fourth-ranked inscriptionists. Others wouldn't wait for you to slowly inscribe fourth-ranked inscriptions. Qin Wentian naturally understood this logic. This was also the reason Di Cheng used to humiliate him. If not, with his attainments in the Tao of inscriptions at the peak of the third-ranked, he was already equivalent to someone at the peak of Yuanfu. Martial Tao and divine inscriptions couldn't be compared directly. However, this wouldn't affect the respect of powerful divine inscriptionists. A fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist meant that they had the ability to inscribe fourth-ranked formations and forge fourth-ranked divine weapons. As such, there would be many people who would seek help from them, including heavenly dipper sovereigns. On the path of martial Tao, there are countless transformations. Everyone has their own methods of cultivation, and the Tao of divine inscriptions is the same as well. Others have their own methods of cultivation, but I have my own philosophy. From complexity to simplicity, this is what I've comprehended. Although I haven't stepped into the fourth-ranked divine inscriptions yet, it's only a matter of time before I succeed. Qin Wentian smiled. His path in the Tao of divine inscriptions was closely related to the spirit refinement method he cultivated. The spirit refinement method borrowed the power of divine inscriptions to condense divine energy. For the first level of the spirit refinement method, one would be able to condense any first-ranked divine energy in an instant. For the second level of the spirit refinement method, one would be able to condense any second-ranked divine energy in an instant. Currently, although Qin Wentian hadn't reached the level where he could condense any third-ranked divine energy in an instant, he could at least condense some simple third-ranked divine energy in an instant. This indicated that his spirit refinement method had already reached the third level of the spirit refinement method, and was only a sliver away from the perfection boundary. The spirit refinement method was the foundation of his current attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions. Does this mean that you'll be able to step into the fourth rank soon? Since I've comprehended it, the fourth rank divine inscriptions is only a matter of time. With a single thought, it shouldn't be too difficult for me to break through to the fourth ranked. Qin Wentian laughed, causing Bai Luyi's heart to palpitate once more. A 19-year-old fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist? Just thinking about it caused her heart to thump wildly. I have to go into closed-door seclusion again. Qin Wentian bitterly smiled. Although he valued the martial path more than the Tao of divine inscriptions, the Tao of divine inscriptions would allow him to gain the recognition of the White Deer Institute within a short period of time. Hence, he could only choose to break through to the fourth-ranked divine inscriptions first. In that case, even though he wasn't even 19 years of age, his status wouldn't be inferior to many of the heavenly rankers on the heavenly fate rankings. The White Deer Institute would also view him in a new light, valuing him from the bottom of their hearts. Okay, do your best in closed-door seclusion. You must definitely break through, okay? Bai Luyi raised her dainty fist to Qin Wentian, her innocent smile exceptionally beautiful. As long as you step into the fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist realm, the weight of the Azure Emperor medallion will be even greater. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head. The weight of the Azure Emperor medallion from a fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist, and that of a fourth-level Yuanfu cultivator, were on two completely different levels. Bai Luyi lifted her hands and clenched them into fists. Qin Wentian, upon seeing her actions, did the same as well. After which, their fists lightly bumped into each other as they exchanged a smile. After which, Bai Luyi departed. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath as he sat down cross-legged. Time was of the essence. He had to take out the Azure Emperor medallion before the White Deer Institute fully recognized Di Feng. If not, once the faction represented by Defeng gained the support of the White Deer Institute, everything would be too late. In the quiet back mountain, the grass was lush and green. Sunlight, rain and dew as well as a light breeze nourished the soil. A young man sat there quietly, as though he was isolated from the rest of the world. Nothing could disturb his heart. Beside the young man, a snow-white puppy was sitting cross-legged like the young man, looking extremely adorable. However, what was even more shocking was that every time night fell, the snow-white puppy would quietly lie down on the ground. From the heavens above, starlight would cascade into its body, causing its body to glow with a golden light. During the day, the puppy would get up and run around, occasionally sticking out its tongue and licking the pants of the young man. It was as though the young man was its kin. Chu Meng and Fan Lu had always been active in the various locations of the Moon Continent. The Hell Arena had become a training ground for them, and there were times when they would meet with ruthless opponents, causing them to be in a life-or-death situation. However, as they continued to temper themselves, their combat prowess grew stronger and stronger. Chu Meng's cultivation base had long stepped into the 6th level of Yuanfu, while Fan Lu had already stepped into the 4th level of Yuanfu. Chu Meng and Fan Lu would often spar against each other. Although Fan Li's cultivation base was inferior to Chu Meng's, the power of his bloodline had grown stronger and stronger. Hence, he was able to spar against Chu Meng, and in addition to the fact that both of them were proficient in archery, they would often spar against each other. The Moon Continent was indeed much more interesting compared to a small country like Chu. Many things happened in the Moon Continent during this period of time. There was news that a young man named Qin Wentian had entered the secret grounds of divine inscriptions together with the star-seizing manner, and under a stroke of good fortune, he managed to obtain the ancient scroll of the Ascendant of the Ascendant. As this news circulated, it instantly caused a huge wave of commotion. Many powerful 4th-ranked grandmasters all had their own ideas. The Gold Element Ascendant was a legendary expert, and he was also a terrifying 5th-ranked grandmaster. One could very well imagine how attractive the ancient scroll of divine inscriptions he inherited was to 4th-ranked grandmasters. After which, when they found out that Qin Wentian was in the White Deer Institute, many of them were disappointed. The White Deer Institute was a major power that was extremely proficient in the Tao of divine inscriptions. Since Qin Wentian was in the White Deer Institute, the ancient scroll of divine inscriptions must have already fallen into their hands. After their investigations, they discovered that Qin Wentian had never stepped out of the White Deer Institute. It was very likely that he was under house arrest. And while the gazes of many in the Moon Continent were on Qin Wentian, he was still in the back mountains of the White Deer Institute. Today, in the White Deer Institute, Bai Lu Yu and 2 other young men were heading towards the back mountains. However, at the foot of the mountain they were obstructed by Bai Lu Yi. "Little E, what do you mean by this?" Bai Lu Yu spoke to Bai Lu Yi, his countenance filled with unhappiness. "Uncle Yu, I know what you are doing. He's currently in closed-door seclusion. It's not a good time to disturb him." Bai Lu Yi stared at Bai Lu Yu. Bai Lu Yu was the eldest son of Bai Lu Tong, and had some attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions. However, his attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions weren't very high. "Since when did the back mountains of my White Deer Institute become occupied by an outsider? Why can't I go there?" Bai Lu Yu coldly laughed. "Not only that, I'm not the one looking for him today. There are quite a few guests who wish to meet with Qin Wentian. You should know who these guests are, right?" "He won't meet with them," Bai Lu Yi confidently replied. She naturally knew who these people were. Recently, there were quite a few 4th-ranked grandmasters who came to the White Deer Institute, wanting to meet with Qin Wentian. The White Deer Institute didn't reject them. The status of a 4th-ranked grandmaster was already extraordinary, and in addition to the fact that there were some people who wanted to make use of the pressure from the outside world to threaten Qin Wentian, how could she not understand? With so many important characters here, as long as the White Deer Institute gave up on Qin Wentian, he would be in an extremely dangerous situation outside. Cooperating with the White Deer Institute and handing over the treasure to them was undoubtedly the best choice. "Is that so? Little E, is your friend really so arrogant? He doesn't even want to meet with a 4th-ranked grandmaster?" Bai Lu Yu coldly laughed. "Even if he doesn't want to meet with me, he should be the one to answer me personally. After speaking, Bai Lu Yu continued walking forwards. Bai Lu Yi's beautiful eyes flashed as her silhouette flickered, blocking Bai Lu Yu's path. Impudent! Bai Lu Yu coldly snorted as his aura gushed forth. It was as though he no longer cared about face. Even if he had to make a move, he still wanted to meet with that person in the back mountains. Bai Lu Yi's beautiful eyes turned ashen, extremely unsightly to behold. Since Senior wishes to meet with me, feel free to do so. An ethereal voice drifted over from the back mountains, causing Bai Lu Yi's beautiful eyes to freeze. The owner of this voice was someone she was too familiar with. Chapter 280. Bai Lu Yu smiled at Bai Lu Yi before walking out. Bai Lu Yi naturally stepped aside and followed behind Bai Lu Yu, arriving at the back of the mountain. On the grassy hillside, Qin Wentian sat cross-legged. Upon seeing Bai Lu Yu, he couldn't help but smile. Does Senior have any instructions for me? Grandmaster Qin, it's so difficult to even meet you. Bai Lu Yu exclaimed in a loud voice. The way he addressed Qin Wentian as Grandmaster Qin contained hints of mockery. Senior must be joking. It's just that Junior has been in closed-door seclusion these few days. Little E was worried that I would be disturbed, hence she stopped Senior. If she offended you in any way, please forgive her. Qin Wentian still had a smile on his face, ignoring Bai Lu Yu's sarcasm. As the saying goes, no one would slap a smiling face. However, Bai Lu Yu continued. Grandmaster Qin is in closed-door seclusion? Could it be that you've already broken through to the 4th ranked? Why can't we meet? Qin Wentian continued smiling, not replying. Bai Lu Yu couldn't help but to add, currently, there are many guests visiting my White Deer Institute, and among them there are even 4th-ranked grandmasters. Grandmaster Qin, would you be willing to give us the face to meet with them? Qin Wentian's expression turned solemn. I Qin don't know anyone in the Moon Continent, why would there be people wanting to pay a visit? Qin Wentian curiously asked. As the sound of his voice faded, an expression of interest appeared on Bai Lu Yu's face, laughing at Qin Wentian for not knowing the immensity of the heavens and earth. He even dared to use the word pay a visit. Not pay a visit. I'm asking you to meet them. Bai Lu Yu emphasized the word pay a visit. Oh. Qin Wentian nodded, after which he fell silent. These grandmasters really came at the right time. He glanced at Bai Lu Yi, and upon seeing the worried expression on her face, he instantly understood. Most probably this was because of the ancient scroll. If not, there wouldn't be any 4th-ranked grandmasters wanting to meet with him. Bai Lu Yu couldn't help but to continue mocking Qin Wentian. Grandmaster Qin, are you still not preparing to move? Why must we move? Qin Wentian had a strange expression on his face as he stared at Bai Lu Yu. Bai Lu Yu's gaze froze as he stared at Qin Wentian. There are so many 4th-ranked grandmasters wanting to meet with you. Tell me, why did you make a move? Could it be that you want all of them to meet with you? Bai Lu Yu's tone had already turned cold, yet Bai Lu Yi sarcastically interjected. Uncle Yu, I'm sure you're very clear of the reason why they want to meet with Qin Wentian. Why do you still want to come here personally to persuade them? Bai Lu Yu's motive was extremely clear. He wanted Qin Wentian to meet with those people, and after that, he wanted Qin Wentian to feel the pressure of the outside world. Only then would Qin Wentian submit to his father, Bai Lu Tong, in order to protect himself. Humph! Bai Lu Yu coldly snorted. Lobbyist? I'm only here to inform him. What do you mean by lobbyist? Could it be that he wants to avoid meeting with all the grandmasters? Senior must be joking. Why would I Qin avoid meeting with them? Qin Wentian faintly replied, the smile on his face gradually vanishing. Bai Lu Yu coldly laughed as he glanced at Qin Wentian. If they don't want to meet, they don't want to meet. What's there to avoid? Qin Wentian continued. The cold smile on Bai Lu Yu's face froze as he stared at Qin Wentian, only to see Qin Wentian continuing. Senior, you've already said it yourself. It's them who want to meet with me, not me the other way round. Bai Lu Yu stared at Qin Wentian. What an interesting fellow. Do you mean that you want all the grandmasters to pay their respects to you? Bai Lu Yu teased. I don't dare to use the word pay their respects. Qin Wentian shook his head. It's just that Senior only said that there's a 4th-ranked grandmaster who wishes to meet with me. Firstly, you didn't mention the name of that grandmaster, and secondly, you didn't even mention the reason why he wants to meet with me. I don't have anything to ask of them, nor have I received any favors from them. If I do that, wouldn't I be belittling myself? Could it be that Senior likes to belittle himself in this manner? Bai Lu Yu's eyes narrowed as he laughed. You have a sharp tongue. Since that's the case, I shall inform the other grandmasters and tell them to pay their respects to Grandmaster Qin. As the sound of his voice faded, Bai Lu Yu flicked his sleeves and departed. The young man behind him swept his gaze over to Qin Wentian, his eyes gleaming with sharpness. After the three of them left, Bai Lu Yi's beautiful eyes flickered with worry. She turned to Qin Wentian. During the time you were in closed-door seclusion, there were rumors circulating that you obtained the ancient scroll of the Ascendant. Bai Lu Yu is the son of Bai Lu Tong, and I'm sure you're very clear of his motive for coming here. Today, a group of grandmasters came here, and they're extremely ferocious. Qin Wentian nodded his head lightly as he stood up. Seeing the haggard look on Bai Lu Yi's face, he couldn't help but smile. Don't worry if they go too far. I won't let them off easy. Bai Lu Yi's beautiful eyes brightened as she stared at the smile on Qin Wentian's face. Did you really break through this time around? Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head. Really? Bai Lu Yi asked again. Yes. Qin Wentian nodded his head again. Fourth rank, you're not lying to me? Bai Lu Yi asked again, the light in her eyes growing brighter and brighter. Fourth ranked, a 19-year-old fourth-ranked grandmaster. Qin Wentian rolled his eyes as he walked over and rapped Bai Lu Yi on her head. Absolutely true, I'm not lying to you. That's great. Bai Lu Yi's countenance was filled with excitement. She couldn't help but jump up as she hugged Qin Wentian tightly. Heavens, I've actually seen a 19-year-old fourth-ranked grandmaster with my own eyes. Is he going to create history in the Moon continent? This is too crazy, Qin Wentian, you're too crazy. Qin Wentian didn't expect Bai Lu Yi to be so excited. Feeling the softness on his arm, Qin Wentian's eyes stared unblinkingly at the pure and innocent girl. As though sensing Qin Wentian's gaze, Bai Lu Yi froze for a moment. Her beautiful eyes flickered as she glanced down at her own body leaning on Qin Wentian's arm. Instantly, a blush appeared on her face. Coupled with that pure and innocent countenance of hers, it caused Qin Wentian to stare in a daze. Although he was already used to beauties, the pure and innocent Bai Lu Yi in front of him right now was simply too beautiful. The excitement in her eyes was pure and without any impurities. Wait here, I'll help you blow things up a little more. Bai Lu Yi's eyes lit up as she sprinted away. As though sensing something, Bai Lu Yi rubbed her temples as she turned back to glare at Qin Wentian. Bastard, how could you be so strong? Only now did I realize. Qin Wentian was completely speechless. After which, he only saw Bai Lu Yi smiling sweetly at him as she sped away. Blow things up a little more? Qin Wentian blinked his eyes as he stared at the graceful silhouette of Bai Lu Yi. This lass really wanted to see the world in chaos. Not long after, Qin Wentian saw a group of silhouettes flying over. Many of these people had white hair and white beards, exuding an air of immortality. There were also a few who had amiable expressions on their faces, their eyes gleaming with sharpness. However, regardless of their external appearances, the aura they exuded was the same arrogance. Powerful divine inscriptionists had always been worshipped and respected by others. The major powers of the Yuanfu continent were all willing to pay a hefty price to nurture them, as long as they were willing. Fourth-ranked divine inscriptionists would never lack wealth, nor would they lack fame. No matter where they went, they would be like the moon surrounded by stars. Even now, there were several old men with cultivation bases at the upper third level of Yuanfu standing behind them, protecting them. For those with limited achievements in the martial path, if they had talent in the Tao of divine inscriptions, they would spend a large amount of time researching divine inscriptions. Hence, even if they were fourth-ranked divine inscriptionists, they might only have a cultivation base at the Yuanfu realm. Hence, they needed guards, and naturally there would be people willing to be their guards. It was inevitable that they would be filled with arrogance. When they appeared in front of Qin Wentian could clearly feel the intense aura exuded by these divine inscriptionists. Two of them are heavenly dipper sovereigns, while the rest are all at the Yuanfu realm. The weakest among them is only at the 5th level of Yuanfu. Qin Wentian swept his gaze over. instantly knowing the cultivation bases of these people. He could tell that they were at the Yuanfu realm, but he couldn't tell that they were at the Yuanfu realm. One of the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns was someone that Qin Wentian was acquainted with. Senior pays his respects to Grandmaster Fenrir. Qin Wentian politely bowed to one of the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. Back then, during the exchange in the star-seizing manor, it was none other than Grandmaster Fenrir who was the judge. Grandmaster Fenrir smiled as he nodded his head. His gaze was fixed on Qin Wentian's surroundings as a sharp glint flickered in his eyes. His heart pounded violently, as though he had just seen something extremely shocking. Back then, when we parted at the star-seizing manor, I could already tell that you were an extraordinary individual. Now you've truly met with a heaven-sent opportunity. Naturally, this opportunity was also obtained through your own hard work. Congratulations. Grandmaster Fenrir smiled and nodded to Qin Wentian, treating him with respect. His tone was calm, and there was no hint of arrogance in it. Qin Wentian could easily sense the closeness radiating from Grandmaster Fenrir. He also understood the meaning behind Grandmaster Fenrir's words. He smiled and nodded his head in reply. Junior's luck isn't bad. Back then, when Grandmaster Fenrir imparted the divine inscriptions to me, Junior also benefited greatly from it. After speaking, Qin Wentian bowed again, appearing extremely sincere. Good. Grandmaster Fenrir smiled as he nodded his head. He shifted his feet slightly to the side, as though he was intentionally putting some distance between himself and the others. Yet in his heart he couldn't help but sigh. This young man was definitely not an ordinary individual. In the future, he would definitely transform into a dragon that soared to the 9 heavens. Right now, he could only befriend Qin Wentian and not offend him. However, the others didn't notice Grandmaster Fenrir's casual actions. They also didn't understand the deep meaning behind his simple words. Not only that, some of them even thought that Grandmaster Fenrir was hinting that Qin Wentian had obtained the Ascendant's inheritance. And Qin Wentian had actually admitted it. As such, the light in their eyes grew even brighter as they stared at Qin Wentian. The way they looked at Qin Wentian was as though they were looking at their prey. The inheritance of the Ascendant today, they had to force this brat to hand it over. Chapter 281. Swords drawn and bows bent. This was the perfect word to describe the situation Qin Wentian was currently facing. Bai Luyu had also arrived. He was the one who brought these grandmasters here. However, he had an ulterior motive. He didn't wish for Qin Wentian to hand over the ancient scroll. He only wanted to make Qin Wentian feel pressured. When Qin Wentian couldn't withstand the pressure, he would naturally give Qin Wentian a chance. Hence, Bai Luyu merely stood at the side, a cold smile curling his lips. In such a situation, he wanted to see how Qin Wentian would handle it. But at this moment, the sound of footsteps drifted over. Bai Luyu turned his head, only to see a group of people walking over. He couldn't help but be stunned. It was actually the great elder Bai Lui, Bai Lu Shan and Bai Lu Jing. This last, did she think that by bringing the great elder here, she would be able to help Qin Wentian? Bai Luyu naturally knew that this was Bai Lu Yi's doing. He bowed slightly to the large-eyed elder as he called out, "Great elder." And the large-eyed elder casually nodded his head. Yet his heart was filled with bewilderment. Bai Lui had told him that there would be a good show to watch here, hence, he decided to follow her here. "Father." Bai Luyu suddenly noticed Bai Lu Tong also walking over. Bai Lu Tong nodded his head lightly as he glanced at the large-eyed elder. He knew that the great elder would be here, hence he decided to follow along. He wouldn't allow Bai Lui to spoil his plans. The other grandmasters didn't rush to speak. They remained silent for a moment, and upon seeing that the large-eyed elder and Bai Lu Tong had no intention to speak, many thoughts flashed through their minds. They weren't in a hurry, so Qin Wentian wasn't in a hurry as well. He simply stood there quietly. However, with so many seniors trying to force him to abdicate, how could he not be in a good mood? Finally, an old man with sunken eyes and a high-nose bridge was the first to lose his cool. He stared at Qin Wentian with narrowed eyes akin to a venomous snake, causing Qin Wentian to feel extremely uncomfortable. Qin Wentian. This old man had a cultivation base at the 7th level of Yuanfu, and behind him were 3 guards at the 9th level of Yuanfu. His eyes narrowed as he coldly laughed. You want us to come here personally to see you? This is the first time I've seen someone as arrogant as you. Senior, you must be joking. Qin Wentian pointed at the path behind the old man and smiled. What do you mean? The other party stared at Qin Wentian. I didn't mean for Senior to come and see me. I think Senior must have misunderstood. The main road is there, Senior. Qin Wentian smiled and pointed to the road ahead. What he meant was obvious. Senior, you must be joking. I didn't ask you to come to see me. You came to see me yourself. If you don't want to see me, the road is right there. Go ahead. How could the other party not understand the meaning behind Qin Wentian's words? His sunken eyes deepened, and a cold glint burst forth from them. Sharp-tongued. You wanted us to come here, but now you want me to leave just like that? Isn't this too ridiculous? You overestimate yourself too much. The other party continued. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with sharpness when he heard the other party's words. Are you crazy? As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, the expression of the old man stiffened. Did the other party just say that he was crazy in public? Ever since he stepped into the ranks of fourth-rank divine inscriptionists, he had never been humiliated before. Behind him, 3 silhouettes stepped out, exuding a terrifying aura as they gushed towards Qin Wentian. As long as the old man gave the order, they would immediately act against Qin Wentian. I'll give you a chance to apologize. The countenance of the old man turned ice-cold, so cold that it pierced into the bones. It was still too early for the contest over the ancient scroll of the Ascendant, but now, he wanted an explanation from Qin Wentian. Seems like not only are you crazy, your sickness isn't light at all. The smile on Qin Wentian's face faded. His eyes swept over to the newcomers as his gaze gradually turned sharp. How could he not be angered by these people? But since they were all divine inscriptionists, he might as well try to be polite before resorting to violence. Since the other party wasn't going to be polite, what did he, Qin Wentian, have to fear? Impudent. The 3 of them roared in rage as they took a step forward. However, Qin Wentian only spoke, if you take another step forward, I'll kill you. As the sound of the word kill faded, a bone-chilling killing intent gushed forth from Qin Wentian, causing the entire space to be filled with a bone-chilling killing intent. The hearts of the 3 involuntarily shuddered when they saw Qin Wentian's gaze sweeping over. Even with their cultivation bases, they could feel a terrifying coldness from Qin Wentian's eyes. It was as though the sharpness of a blade was slicing through their minds, piercing into their bones. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, the entire hillside instantly fell into silence. A light breeze gusted by, causing the green grass on the ground to sway lightly, only to see Qin Wentian staring at the 4th-rank divine inscriptionist. Each and every one of his gazes was akin to a cold blade, piercing into the eyes of the 4th-rank divine inscriptionist. I've already given you face by addressing you as senior, yet you don't know how to conduct yourself. Since you don't want to listen to my kind words, I, Qin, will repeat my intentions one more time. Qin Wentian coldly continued, I, Qin Wentian, am cultivating here. You can come and go as you please. What does this have to do with me? Please don't use the tone of, I invited you here to speak to me. Firstly, I, Qin, am not your junior, and secondly, I have nothing to ask of you. Why would I invite you here? If you have nothing else to say, just scram. The domineering tone of Qin Wentian's words caused the people in the surroundings to be stunned, as their eyes flickered with uncertainty. Arrogance, truly arrogance. Although there was some logic in Qin Wentian's words, in this world, the strong reign supreme. Who wouldn't respect a 4th-rank divine inscriptionist? Yet he, Qin Wentian, directly told the divine inscriptionist that he was the one who came to see him, not the one who invited him here. If you have nothing else to say, just scram. One could say that the words spoken by Qin Wentian had completely offended a 4th-rank divine inscriptionist. Even if Qin Wentian was fine today, if a 4th-rank divine inscriptionist wanted to deal with a Yuanfu cultivator like Qin Wentian, it would be too much for him to handle. The large-eyed elder was also baffled by Qin Wentian's words. Where did this little fellow's self-confidence come from? Glancing at Bai Luyi beside him, Bai Luyi's beautiful eyes flickered with a strange light, as though she was at ease. Her confidence in Qin Wentian didn't seem to be any less than Qin Wentian himself. Grandmaster Fenrir, on the other hand, had a smile on his face. He didn't say anything as he quietly watched the development unfold. He also wanted to see how Qin Wentian would deal with the situation today. As for the high-nosed elder, his countenance turned extremely sinister after hearing Qin Wentian's words. If there's nothing else, just scram? Was this something a first-rank Yuanfu cultivator would say to him? If he took another step forward, he would die. Where did his confidence come from? Maybe he had obtained the ancient scroll of the Ascendant, allowing him to inscribe top-tier third-rank divine inscriptions as well as formations. However, with him here, did Qin Wentian really think that he could borrow the power of formations or divine inscriptions to kill his follower? Brother Liang, the temper of the youngsters these days is really bad. A black-faced, middle-aged man laughed. Brother Liang was none other than the high-nosed elder. If it wasn't for the fact that we are in the White Deer Institute, given Brother Liang's temper, he would have died 10 times over. The black-faced, middle-aged man continued. The high-nosed elder narrowed his eyes. Regardless of whether they were in the White Deer Institute or not, why would they waste so much time talking nonsense with Qin Wentian? They would directly kill him and seize the ancient scroll. But now they all understood that since the White Deer Institute allowed them to enter, it meant that the White Deer Institute had yet to force Qin Wentian to hand over the ancient scroll. Similarly, the White Deer Institute wanted to use them to threaten Qin Wentian. Hence, these people temporarily decided to wait and see. The high-nosed elder surnamed Liang was the most impatient of them all. Hence, he took the initiative to make things difficult for Qin Wentian. Indeed, this brat doesn't respect his seniors. He should be punished for his rudeness. Another person spoke. This person stroked his white beard, exuding an air of immortality. This old man was already over 150 years old, and had immersed himself in the study of divine inscriptions for a long time. He had also stepped into the fourth-rank divine inscriptionist realm for quite a few years, and there were many who knew him in the Moon continent. Many divine inscriptionists had received his guidance before. Hence, this old man was someone of virtue and prestige. That's what Old Song said as well. The black-faced, middle-aged man laughed. The high-nosed elder glanced at Old Song. Old Song, how should we punish this brat? Does Fenrir have any opinions? Old Song stroked his beard as he turned his gaze onto Grandmaster Fenrir. Don't ask me. Back then I had a friendly encounter with him. Today I'm only here to take a look. I won't interfere in your matters. Fenrir smiled as he waved his hands, not getting involved in this matter. Qin Wentian was brimming with confidence. He must have already made preparations. He was more than happy to watch the show. In that case, the ancient scroll of the Ascendant? Old Song placed his hand on his beard, his eyes gleaming with sharpness. That has nothing to do with me. If you guys can obtain it, just go ahead. Fenrir waved his hands. Good. Old Song stroked his beard as he laughed. They had one less strong opponent. This brat was so disrespectful to Grandmaster Liang and the other Grandmasters. He deserves death. At this moment, a voice drifted over from the back of the crowd. The black-faced middle-aged man smiled. Gauze, it seems like you have some ideas. I've long recognized this brat. He doesn't respect his elders, and has the ambition of a wolf. If he were to obtain the ancient scroll of the Ascendant, it would be a waste of a heavenly treasure. This brat deserves death, and I'm sure the White Deer Institute won't hold it against him. Gauze's voice was ice-cold. Gauze, how shameless can you be? Bai Lui cursed as she turned her gaze onto Gauze. Back then he had some grudges with Qin Wentian. But Qin Wentian didn't hold it against him. Yet now, Gauze actually wanted these people to kill Qin Wentian. How ruthless. Miss Bai Lui, it seems like your heart aches for your lover. But I, Gauze, believe that the White Deer Institute will understand right from wrong. Gauze wasn't angered, he casually laughed. The crowd shifted their gazes onto the large-eyed elder and Bai Lu Tong, as though they had already discussed how to deal with Qin Wentian. Next, they just had to wait for the White Deer Institute to express their stance. Bai Lu Tong's gaze shifted onto Qin Wentian as he coldly stated, that will depend on what he chooses. Evidently, Bai Lu Tong wanted to push the pressure onto Qin Wentian, forcing him to make a decision. These grandmasters wanted to kill him. What did he want, the ancient scroll of the Ascendant or his life? Qin Wentian stared at the people before him. Each and every one of them was a person of virtue and prestige, deciding his life and death as they chatted. It was as though his life wasn't even worth mentioning. And that gauze, he actually dared to throw stones at Qin Wentian when he was down. Qin Wentian swept his gaze over the crowd as he slowly spoke. After speaking so much nonsense, have you finally revealed your true intentions? What a bunch of sanctimonious fellows. I, Qin, don't have the ancient scroll of the Ascendant, and even if I did, it wouldn't be your turn. Chapter 282. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, Bai Lutong faintly glanced at him. Qin Wentian, it's a good thing that you're hot-blooded and don't fear death. However, there are many times when there are better choices to be made. Why must you choose the path of death for the sake of venting your anger? No matter what, you are a guest of the White Deer Institute. If you are willing to hand over the ancient scroll to the Institute, I'm sure the other grandmasters won't continue to make things difficult for you. Bai Lutong's countenance was calm, as though he was thinking for Qin Wentian's sake. However, he chose to speak only now. One could very well imagine his intentions. The countenances of those grandmasters all changed as they silently cursed at this old fox. Senior, you worry too much. Junior is still young, how would I want to die? Qin Wentian calmly replied. Handing over the ancient scroll to Bai Lutong? Taking it for himself would be more appropriate. Oh! Bai Lutong's countenance flickered before he smiled. Since this is the case, I won't try to persuade you any further. After speaking, he closed his eyes, as though he was prepared to accept the actions of these grandmasters. The high-nosed old Liang eccentric Song, the black-faced middle-aged man and the rest exchanged glances, as hints of laughter could be seen flickering in their eyes. The high-nosed old Liang stared at Qin Wentian. His sunken eyes narrowed as he sinisterly stated, the ancient scroll of the Ascendant naturally belongs to the strongest. Since a junior like you wants to take it for yourself, only death awaits you. As the sound of his voice faded, 3 protectors stepped out, moving towards Qin Wentian. I've said it before, take one more step and you will die. Qin Wentian stared at the 3 protectors, his eyes flashing with a golden light. Instantly, the 3 protectors felt their heads shuddering, as though they were struck by a powerful attack. Instantly, the will of their mandates gushed forth, as a pressure as heavy as a mountain gushed forth. One of the protectors grabbed out with his palm, and instantly, a gigantic blood-colored palm the size of a mountain appeared in the air, causing Qin Wentian's blood to flow unimpeded. Boom! That blood-colored gigantic palm slammed down, causing an explosive sound to ring out. Just when everyone thought that Qin Wentian had died, they only saw Qin Wentian still standing there with a smile on his face, calmly looking at them. Those divine inscriptionists all frowned. They could feel that Qin Wentian's body was gradually turning blurry, as though he wasn't a corporeal entity. Although he was right in front of them, he didn't seem to have a body of flesh and blood. Fenrir rubbed his chin as a faint smile appeared on his face. Divine inscriptionists all had their own specialties. Some were proficient in divine inscriptions, some were proficient in formations, some were proficient in weaponsmithing, and some were proficient in the art of puppetry. Although both of them were 4th-ranked grandmasters, the disparity in their attainments in all aspects could be immense. Fenrir was extremely proficient in divine inscriptions, as well as divine inscriptions formations. Not only that, as a heavenly dipper sovereign, his perception was exceedingly sharp. He had long since discovered that there was a grand formation inscribed by Qin Wentian here. This formation was an illusory formation, where the illusory and real coexisted. This illusory formation was a 4th-ranked formation. Not only that, what made Fenrir even more astonished was that this 4th-ranked illusory formation had no offensive capabilities. Hence, the illusory energy contained within it was extremely powerful, making it extremely difficult to see through. Hence, the other 4th-ranked grandmasters didn't even notice the existence of this 4th-ranked illusory formation. They also didn't realize that the true purpose of this 4th-ranked illusory formation was to conceal the divine inscriptions within. Those divine inscriptions could be activated at the slightest touch. Fenrir couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for these so-called 4th-ranked grandmasters. How much determination did Qin Wentian have today? Illusory formation? Those grandmasters weren't mediocre characters. At this moment they could also tell that there was an extremely well-hidden illusory formation in this place. Old Song. The sharp-nosed old Liang stared at the esteemed Old Song with a questioning expression on his face. Old Song was someone who had dabbled in the art of formations. Old Song was frowning as he narrowed his eyes. An ominous feeling welled up in his heart. He had dabbled in the Tao of formations, and now that there was an illusory formation hidden in front of him, he actually couldn't see through it. This was sufficient to cause him to be on high alert. Staring at the smiling young man in front of him, Old Song continued, "Don't worry, this formation is illusory, we can't attack it. Kill him." Kill. The sharp-nosed old Liang spat out another command upon hearing Old Song's words. The three experts dashed forwards, aiming for Qin Wentian's silhouette. Regardless of whether his opponent was real or illusory, they would still destroy him. However, at this moment, a terrifying whistling sound abruptly rang out. The eyes of the three experts narrowed as they stared at the ground beneath their feet. Over there, a resplendent light suddenly flashed. That was the glow of divine inscriptions. Shio shio shio. The terrifying whistling sound of swords instantly transformed into an ear-piercing sound. The three experts only saw tens of thousands of sword chi converging together to form a spiraling tempest that swept towards them. The might of the tempest formed by tens of thousands of sword chi was extremely terrifying. It was akin to a meat grinder, capable of annihilating everything in its path. They instantly soared into the air, wanting to evade it. Boom! All of a sudden, a sound reverberated through the air. Another resplendent divine inscription lit up beneath their feet. They only felt that there was a force of millions of kilograms pulling at their feet. Their entire bodies were incomparably heavy, and they were actually unable to rise into the air. In an extremely short instant, the spiraling tempest formed by the sword chi revolved around the three of them, enveloping them within. Expressions of terror could be seen on the faces of the three experts as they howled in rage, and oh, their bodies trembled violently, as despair could be seen in their eyes. The spiraling tempest that enveloped them was definitely an attack at the pinnacle of Yuanfu, and right now it was engulfing them. "Save me!" One of them screamed in a frenzy, as he turned his head and stared at the sharp-nosed old Liang. The look of despair in his eyes caused the hearts of those who saw it to tremble. "Stop!" The sharp-nosed old Liang roared in rage. However, the spiraling tempest formed by the sword chi had completely engulfed the three experts. The whistling sound of the sword chi continued, and occasionally, a drop of crimson blood would splatter out. When the tempest finally calmed down, there was nothing left in that direction. The three experts at the pinnacle of Yuanfu vanished like smoke, vanishing from the vision of the spectators. The countenances of the spectators were all extremely unsightly. There were so many grandmasters here, yet three of them had been killed by Qin Wentian using the Tao of divine inscriptions. Their gazes turned to Qin Wentian, who was still standing there. Only now did they realize that this young man wasn't as weak as they had imagined. Fourth-ranked Grandmaster? Qin Wentian stared at the sharp-nosed old Liang, as a mocking light flashed in his eyes. "Do you dare to break my divine inscriptions?" Old Liang's countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. He turned his head and glanced at eccentric Song, only to see eccentric Song narrowing her eyes in contemplation. Earlier, the divine inscriptions were concealed by his illusory formation, and it's true that the formation didn't have any offensive capabilities. Those three experts died to the hidden divine inscriptions. I'm sure you've already seen it, and it wasn't just a single peak-tier, third-rank divine inscriptions. Qin Wentian had long since prepared for this. Their deaths were all worth it. Eccentric Song calmly stated, while old Liang's countenance turned ashen. Was this considered using his protectors to probe Qin Wentian's strength? This old fart was truly scheming and far-sighted. Is that so? Since you've already found out, does Grandmaster want to test it out? Qin Wentian indifferently stated to Eccentric Song. Eccentric Song stroked his beard as he laughed. Just a mere third-rank divine inscription. There's no need for me to act personally. Gauze, you go and break it. Qin Wentian laughed. Letting Gauze break it? Old fox. Gauze cursed in his heart when he heard Eccentric Song's words. Although he was extremely unhappy with Qin Wentian, he couldn't help but feel fear in his heart when he saw the scene earlier. He knew that it would be extremely dangerous for him to break the divine inscription. The other grandmasters didn't reply, they merely watched on calmly. At this moment, their hearts were filled with bewilderment. That illusory formation could even fool their eyes. Was it really a third-ranked formation? However, they would rather believe that there were some unique formations that could hide it perfectly, preventing them from seeing through it. If not, if it was a fourth-ranked formation, then, however, they felt that they were worrying too much. How could it be so easy to break through from the third rank to the fourth ranked? How old was Qin Wentian? It was impossible. Without at least 10 years of accumulation, it would be impossible. The inheritance of the ascendant is truly powerful, Bai Luyu faintly commented. Momentarily, the eyes of the crowd brightened. That's right, Qin Wentian must have comprehended a powerful formation from the ancient scroll of the ascendant, causing them to be unable to see through it. Gauze, speed up. The black-faced middle-aged man turned his gaze onto Gauze as he coldly stated, "If you kill this brat, we will not mistreat you." Gauze's countenance was extremely unsightly to behold, but he still nodded his head. Numerous puppets appeared before him, and he followed behind them as they advanced towards Qin Wentian. "Kill!" Gauze spat out a single word. Momentarily, the puppets frenziedly dashed out, while he himself stood there motionlessly. Although the killing intent radiating from him was extremely sharp, he was still extremely cautious. Abruptly, the ground beneath the illusory formation lit up with a resplendent radiance as a terrifying aura radiated forth. A terrifying great rock appeared in the air, lunging towards the puppets. Gauze stared at the divine inscription in front of him. As his perception gushed out, his eyes gleaming with sharpness. This divine inscription is extremely easy to break. Gauze, why are you still not moving forward? The black-faced middle-aged man coldly stated. Gauze nodded his head. It wasn't difficult to break the divine inscription in front of him. His steps were extremely slow, as he maintained his vigilance. However, when he took the third step, before he could even get close to the divine inscription, another divine inscription lit up beneath his feet. It was unknown how many divine inscriptions were hidden within this formation. Busy. A whistling sound rang out from below. Gauze's countenance instantly paled. He was walking on the divine inscription, yet he didn't even notice the divine inscription beneath his feet. Pucci. A terrifying long spear pierced through Gauze's body, nailing him to the ground. Gauze's eyes were still wide open as he stared at Qin Wentian. Regret could be seen flickering in his eyes. Why did he have to come here today? Why did he have to be so talkative? Only to see Qin Wentian waving his hands, as a surge of flames gushed forth, engulfing Gauze's body, incinerating his corpse. At the same time, Qin Wentian kept the ownerless puppets. Now these puppets belonged to him. The various divine inscriptionists stood there, their countenances ashen. The formation of this Empyrean was simply too powerful to be able to conceal the third-ranked divine inscription so perfectly. Even Gauze, a peak-tier third-ranked divine inscriptionist, was killed by stepping on it. Fourth-ranked divine inscriptionists? Qin Wentian stared at those who didn't dare to take the risk. He coldly laughed. All of you are already so old, yet you still have some attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions. What a bunch of trash, how pitiful. Chapter 283. Qin Wentian wasn't polite at all, insulting all the Grandmaster-level characters in front of him, as though he wanted to incite their anger. Who were these people? Usually, no matter where they went, they would always be treated as esteemed guests. Today they were being pointed at by a young man. How could they not be embarrassed? However, they didn't reply, nor did any of them act out in anger. Earlier, they forced Gauze to step forward because they wanted him to probe Qin Wentian's strength. They didn't feel the slightest bit of pity for Gauze's death. At the very least, they knew that this illusory formation was extremely mysterious. Beneath it, there were many fatal divine inscriptions. Although they were only third-ranked divine inscriptions, as long as they were hidden there, they wouldn't be able to sense them. No matter how high their attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions were, stepping into the formation would be extremely dangerous. Which of these people weren't old fellows who had lived for more than half a century? Facing such a situation, they would naturally be extremely cautious. It didn't matter if others died. but their own lives were extremely precious. Even if Qin Wentian wanted to infuriate them, it wouldn't work. Young man, what a heavy, baleful aura. Eccentric Song stroked his beard as he coldly continued, however, even if you have the ancient scroll of the Ascendant, do you think you have the qualifications to be so arrogant in front of us? Earlier we already gave you a chance, but who would have thought that you would be so obstinate? A fourth-ranked Grandmaster would personally inscribe divine inscriptions to kill you. How can you withstand that? As Eccentric Song spoke, he glanced at the others, causing smiles to appear on their faces. Old Ginger was spicier than young Ginger. Why would they bother to break Qin Wentian's formation? They could directly inscribe divine inscriptions to kill Qin Wentian. It would be as easy as flipping their palms. How thick-skinned. Bai Lui couldn't help but laugh when she saw that a group of fourth-ranked grandmasters didn't even dare to break the formation. What made her even more speechless was that they didn't dare to break the formation, and instead wanted to inscribe divine inscriptions to kill Qin Wentian. Such an action was simply a humiliation, yet these old fellows didn't seem to have the slightest bit of self-awareness. With regards to Bai Luyi's voice, these people chose to ignore it. Old Liang, this brat killed your protector. Inscribe a divine inscription to kill him. Old Liang, you should be the one to do it. The black-faced middle-aged man turned his gaze onto Old Liang, causing Old Liang to frown. After which, the black-faced middle-aged man continued, I'll get the puppets to protect you. This dark-faced middle-aged man had refined quite a few peak third-tier puppets. He wanted to refine fourth-tier puppets, and the Empyrean's ancient scroll was his chance. I will carve an array to protect you. Elder Song nodded at Elder Liang. Elder Liang pondered for a moment before nodding. At this moment, Qin Wentian also understood. There were many people here today, but other than Fenrir, there were only 3 fourth-ranked grandmasters in front of him. Not only that, there was also a Heavenly Dipper sovereign who hadn't spoken since the start. Who knew if he was a fourth-ranked grandmaster or not? He and Wind Valley were the most powerful people here. Elder Song and the others were probably quite afraid of him, and had not allowed him to do anything. As for the others, they should be their disciples or protectors. Qin Wentian wondered if there were any fourth-ranked grandmasters among them. Old Liang warily took a step forward, his sunken eyes staring at Qin Wentian. He no longer dared to treat Qin Wentian as an ordinary third-ranked grandmaster. Seeing the actions of these people, Qin Wentian laughed, I, Qin, shall wait for you all to break the array. After speaking, he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, as though everything that happened in the outside world had nothing to do with him. This brat is extremely crafty, Old Liang, don't fall for his tricks. The black-faced middle-aged man summoned his puppet to protect Old Liang. Old Liang took a few steps forward, releasing his perception to the maximum. With a stomp of his foot, numerous runic inscriptions manifested on the ground. This fourth-ranked grandmaster was starting to inscribe divine inscriptions. Although Old Liang was inscribing the divine inscriptions, he didn't dare to move forward. Instead, he maintained a certain distance from Qin Wentian. Not long after, the divine inscriptions Old Liang was inscribing exuded a powerful might. As an experienced fourth-ranked grandmaster, he only needed 2 hours to inscribe a complete fourth-ranked attack-type divine inscription. The moment the divine inscription was completed, it would be the time of Qin Wentian's death. An hour passed, yet Qin Wentian's eyes were still closed in meditation. Old Liang inclined his head and glanced at him as a sinister light flickered in his eyes. This brat was just sitting there waiting for his death. After that, he lowered his head and continued inscribing the divine inscription. The might contained within the divine inscription grew stronger and stronger. How slow, Qin Wentian murmured. After which he slammed his palms onto the ground, and instantly, his entire body transformed into a blur as he dashed forward. With a thunderous boom, 2 Jiao dragons appeared in front of him, howling with rage. Old Liang's countenance stiffened, only to see the black-faced middle-aged man coldly snorting as his puppet rushed forward, preparing to block the Jiao dragons. Boom! Qin Wentian took another step forward, as numerous terrifying arrows pierced through the air, directly locking onto Old Liang. Old Liang stepped out as a shield of divine inscriptions appeared in front of him. After which, he saw that Qin Wentian was actually standing in the maw of a demonic dragon. The demonic dragon roared forward, while the Jiao dragons on the left and right acted as his protectors, forcing the black-faced middle-aged man's puppet into retreat. The terrifying claws of the demonic dragon lashed out, forcing old Liang to retreat. With a loud cracking sound, the shield of light shattered, and Qin Wentian slammed his palms onto the ground. Impudent! The black-faced middle-aged man roared, as a long spear of darkness appeared in his hands. His silhouette flickered as he dashed forward. The spear abruptly pierced out. Instantly, the black dragon within the spear howled in rage, exuding a terrifying might. It was as though he had been waiting for this attack. Blasting out a peak-tier third-ranked attack, this spear of darkness should be close to a fourth-ranked divine weapon. Qin Wentian abruptly turned and walked back, while the demonic dragon continued forward, colliding head-on with the black-faced middle-aged man's attack, causing a terrifying sound of destruction to echo out. The light of the demonic dragon was destroyed, yet Qin Wentian had already returned to his original location. Old Liang's countenance was incomparably ashen. The divine inscriptions he painstakingly inscribed were completely destroyed by Qin Wentian's earlier attack. It was as though Qin Wentian had long since thought of how to destroy his incomplete divine inscriptions. With a single strike, all his hard work had gone up in smoke. Everyone, there's no need to hide anymore. Let's use our own methods to kill this brat. The black-faced middle-aged man wielded the long spear in his hands as he coldly spoke, after which, he slashed out with his spear once more, causing the terrifying black dragon to howl madly as it gushed forth. However, in front of Qin Wentian, numerous ancient shields of divine inscriptions appeared. Thunderous rumbling sounds rang out, but the attacks of the black-faced middle-aged man had no way to break through the defense of the divine inscriptions he had inscribed. Qin Wentian used a total of 3 days to inscribe the divine inscriptions as well as the formations here. Ever since Bai Lu Tong obstructed his path back then, he already knew that there would be a commotion. And now, with so many divine inscriptionists here, the preparations he made during these few days could finally be put to good use. Old Liang's sunken eyes narrowed when he heard the words of the black-faced middle-aged man. He had long known that these fellows all had their own methods, but now they finally couldn't endure it any longer. Eccentric Song stroked his beard as his aged eyes gleamed with sharpness. Only the heavenly dipper sovereigns remained silent, calmly spectating everything. It was as though the matters here had nothing to do with him. What do you plan to do? Eccentric Song stared at the old man with trepidation in his eyes. This old man was the same as Fenrir. Not only was he a fourth-ranked grandmaster, he was also a heavenly dipper sovereign. Let's do it based on our own capabilities, that old man casually replied. Yet his tone was filled with incomparable arrogance. Fine, since you put it this way, let's do it based on our own capabilities. As the sound of Eccentric Song's voice faded, 3 puppets appeared in front of him. One of the puppets was fully equipped. Its body was as though it was forged from a divine weapon. Both its limbs were covered in terrifying blades. This scene caused the pupils of old Liang's eyes to narrow. This old man definitely had many treasures on him. As a highly respected fourth-ranked grandmaster, he had accumulated quite a bit of wealth over the years. Just that fourth-ranked puppet alone was already extremely valuable. The black-faced middle-aged man smiled. His palm streaked across the air, and the black spear in his hand seemed to have lost a layer of light. Strands of black mist surged, and a terrifying eerie aura filled the air. That sharp aura was extremely terrifying. This was a rank 4 divine weapon. Previously, he had concealed the grade of the divine weapon. In their eyes, Qin Wentian was just a jumping clown who would die sooner or later. But what they were more concerned about was how Qin Wentian would obtain the Ascendant's ancient scroll after his death. Hence, all of them held back and didn't really want to risk their lives. But what made them surprised was that ordinary methods wouldn't be able to kill Qin Wentian. Instead, they would be in danger. Since this was the case, they might as well use the most direct and tyrannical method to settle this. Old Liang cursed in a low voice. It seemed like his wealth was truly too low. Is this the confidence of a fourth-ranked grandmaster? Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with a terrifying sharpness. Finally, his plan was revealed. Bai Luyi's heart skipped a beat, only to see Bai Luyu, who was beside her, indifferently interjected, "Little E, do you really think he has a chance? These people are all fourth-ranked grandmasters. Don't underestimate them." Wait. Bai Lui stared at the young man. Seeing that Qin Wentian was still as calm as ever, her voice was filled with stubbornness. Old Liang waved his hands as an umbrella appeared in his hands. With a flick of his palms, the umbrella opened up as a terrifying golden light flowed around it. He walked towards Qin Wentian, his eyes cold to the extreme. The long spear of darkness in the hands of the black-faced middle-aged man swept across the ground. Instantly a terrifying black fissure appeared in front of him, and everywhere it passed, the earth would shatter. His gaze was incomparably cold. What kind of third-rank divine inscription could withstand such power? Even if it was concealed, it would still be destroyed. Old Liang's umbrella radiated a terrifying golden light as it spun forward, shattering the earth into dust. As for eccentric Song, he followed behind the puppet. The powerful puppet's legs slashed apart the earth, opening up a path for them. They advanced step by step until they were not far away from Qin Wentian. When they looked at Qin Wentian again, it was as though they were looking at a dead man. "How do you want to die, young man?" Eccentric Song coldly spoke, only to see Qin Wentian standing up. A cold smile could be seen in his eyes as he replied, "Are you guys so confident? No matter how well you inscribe the divine inscriptions, or how powerful your attacks are, they will all be useless. Just like the one behind me," the black-faced middle-aged man coldly stated. "Oh, then why don't you turn around and take a look?" Qin Wentian coldly spoke. The black-faced middle-aged man coldly laughed as he casually turned his head back. However, in an instant his gaze froze on a certain spot. The flowing silver lines of light radiated with a dazzling light. The ground that was sliced apart didn't seem to affect the flow of the divine inscriptions at all. That divine inscription was unceasingly lacerated, even if the ground was split apart. What was even more terrifying was that in that location, the terrifying silvery light of destruction only lasted for an extremely short instant. Under his gaze, the silvery light converged into a terrifying spiraling silver tempest that was akin to a hurricane, instantly blotting out the skies. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out as the earth trembled. The silvery tempest instantly engulfed everything. Qin Wentian's body was abruptly blasted into the void, transforming into a world of silver. The black-robed middle-aged man, eccentric Song and old Liang all stood there in a daze. Their bodies trembled as they inclined their heads, staring at the young man in the air. They only saw Qin Wentian lowering his head, staring down at them with an ice-cold countenance. "What about now?" Qin Wentian faintly spoke. His voice was calm and filled with confidence, yet it caused their hearts to pound wildly. This was a fourth-rank divine inscription. Chapter 284. Fourth-ranked, that storm of sword chi was filled with an incomparably terrifying aura of destruction. This was clearly the aura of a fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist. Not only that, it was an extremely tyrannical storm of fourth-ranked divine inscriptions. Qin Wentian wasn't a third-ranked divine inscriptionist, he was a fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist. A fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist who wasn't even 20 years of age? The hearts of the spectators pounded wildly as they trembled violently. No wonder this brat was so arrogant. No wonder Qin Wentian dared to humiliate them as a bunch of useless juniors. All of them were at least 50 years old, yet they were only at the initial level of fourth-ranked divine inscriptionists. Compared to Qin Wentian, there was no way they could be compared. One could even say that there was no way to compare them. A 20-year-old fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist compared to a 50-year-old fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist? How could they even compare? Even if Qin Wentian had started studying divine inscriptions at the age of 10, it wouldn't have been more than 10 years since he started studying divine inscriptions. As for them, they had at least 40 years of experience. The disparity was too great. However, at the same time as their hearts trembled, this made them even more frenzied. It had to be the ancient scroll of the Ascendant. Even though they had seen Qin Wentian's attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, they still believed that Qin Wentian must have obtained the ancient scroll. Only by relying on the terrifying inheritance of a fifth-ranked divine inscriptionist did he manage to break through to the fourth-ranked. This caused the passion in their hearts to grow even more intense. They had to obtain the ancient scroll of the Ascendant no matter what. This madness caused them to forget the danger they were in. For the ancient scroll of the Ascendant, even if they had to risk their lives, it was worth it. They had to kill this brat and seize the ancient scroll from him. At the side, the large-eyed elder also felt his heart pounding. He glanced at Bai Lui beside him. You knew long ago, right? You came here just to let me witness this scene, didn't you? Grandpa, how is it? Qin Wentian isn't even 19 yet. Bai Lui smiled at the large-eyed elder. Not even 19 yet. The large-eyed elder drew in a deep breath. Leaving aside Qin Wentian's talent in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, just based on his monstrous talent in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, Qin Wentian would definitely become a terrifying character in the future. He definitely had the chance to break through to the 5th-rank Grandmaster realm. Divine Inscriptionists were the same as cultivators. The higher one's cultivation base, the higher their status. How could a celestial phenomenon ascendant compare to a heavenly dipper sovereign? And a 5th-rank Grandmaster would definitely be able to summon the wind and summon the rain in Granxia. It wouldn't be a problem for him to recruit as many heavenly dipper sovereigns as he wished. Not only did Qin Wentian have an extremely high level of attainment in the Tao of Tao, he was also someone with extremely terrifying potential. However, Bai Lutong's thoughts were different. He naturally knew of Qin Wentian's talent and potential, but what he cared more about was the ancient scroll of the Ascendant. Everyone, let's stop here. The large-eyed elder spoke. At this moment, he already didn't wish for this situation to continue. Qin Wentian and the other Grandmasters were truly enraged. If they fought to the death, there would undoubtedly be casualties. Regardless of whether it was the Grandmasters or Qin Wentian, the large-eyed elder didn't want to see that happen. Qin Wentian stood in the air. The entire space around him transformed into a tempest of swords. This divine inscription was indeed a 4th-rank divine inscription from the ancient scroll of divine inscriptions. It was named the Sword Cyclone Tempest, and could be divided into many smaller versions. It was considered a type of divine inscription with an extremely high attack power. In order to inscribe this divine inscription, he had spent a great deal of time and effort before he succeeded. At this moment he was the ruler of this tempest. Below, in the midst of the tempest, the 3 4th-ranked Grandmasters had expressions of extreme caution on their faces as they stared at Qin Wentian. Elder, how can it be possible for us to stop now? The black-faced middle-aged man coldly spoke. After which, he and old Liang walked over to Eccentric Song's side. Eccentric Song, although this brat has inscribed a 4th-ranked divine inscription, your puppet is also a 4th-ranked one. We will protect you while you use your puppet to kill this brat. Once he dies, the divine inscription will have no owner, and the attack will dissipate. How about the 3 of us cultivate the ancient scroll of the Ascendant together? Eccentric Song lightly nodded her head. The 2 peak-tier 3rd-ranked puppets were already on her left and right, while the 4th-ranked puppet stood in front. The body of the puppet that was forged from a divine weapon exuded an aura of coldness. Elder, you've also heard it. I, Qin, have been in a passive position from the start to the end. This brat wants my life. Qin Wentian spoke to the large-eyed elder, his words causing the large-eyed elder's expression to stiffen. He knew that if these 4th-ranked Grandmasters didn't kill Qin Wentian, they wouldn't give up. Leaving aside the ancient scroll of the Ascendant, if Qin Wentian was still alive, he would be a huge threat to them as well. After today, there would be many transcendent powers coming to the White Deer Institute to recruit Qin Wentian. For a 19-year-old Grandmaster, even if it was a transcendent power, they would be willing to support him unconditionally, allowing him to research divine inscriptions. So no matter from which angle one looked at it from, Qin Wentian had to die. Grand Elder, you won't be able to persuade him otherwise, Bai Lutong faintly stated. He naturally hoped that the battle would continue. Eccentric Song, order the puppet to kill this brat. Old Liang, use your divine weapon to protect him. The black-faced middle-aged man's voice rang out. He already knew that the umbrella-shaped divine weapon of the high-nosed old Liang could be used for both offense and defense. Good, this brat is too arrogant. Destroy him. Eccentric Song stroked his white beard as he spoke with confidence, after which, his 4th-ranked puppet soared up into the skies, the sabers on its body lacerating the space around it. Even the sword chi was directly sliced apart. Below, the black-faced middle-aged man stabbed his spear into the ground. Instantly, the ground crumbled apart, transforming into a vacuum. At the same time, old Liang's umbrella opened up, floating above the heads of the three of them as a screen of light enveloped them within. With their bodies enveloped by fourth-rank divine inscriptions, they didn't dare to rush out recklessly. Hence, they used their divine weapons to protect themselves, while relying on the fourth-rank puppet to kill the Lord of Divine Inscriptions, Qin Wentian. Die! Qin Wentian flicked his finger in the air, and instantly, a terrifying sword tempest gushed towards the umbrella-shaped divine weapon. In an instant, the golden light from the tempest sword flashed, and at the same time, the fourth-ranked puppet soared up into the skies. With a terrifying sharpness, it slashed out with its palms as a terrifying beam of cold light shot towards Qin Wentian. Humph! Qin Wentian snorted as he continued, "This fourth-ranked puppet, I'll gladly accept it." As the sound of his voice faded, a terrifying sword tempest gushed forth, colliding with the fourth-ranked puppet in a frenzy. At the same time, Qin Wentian waved his palms as a gigantic golden-armored puppet appeared in front of him. "Go!" Qin Wentian coldly stated. Momentarily, the golden-armored puppet dashed towards the bladed puppet, while Qin Wentian's silhouette floated in the air, once again staring at the three divine inscriptionists hiding within their divine weapons. Puppet, he also has a fourth-ranked puppet on him. The countenances of Eccentric Song and the other two turned ashen. The golden-armored puppet and the blade-wielding puppet were locked in combat, and there was also the terrifying sword tempest from the side. They had no way to affect Qin Wentian in the slightest. With a wave of his hands, tens of thousands of sword lights whistled through the air, coalescing into a terrifying gigantic sword that exuded boundless sharpness. After which, Qin Wentian pointed his finger downwards, and instantly, the gigantic sword slashed down from the heavens. With a thunderous boom, the gigantic sword slammed into the protective screen of light, causing the bodies of Eccentric Song and the other two to tremble violently. What should we do? What should we do? Eccentric Song was in a state of panic. This young man who wasn't even 19 years of age had completely exceeded their expectations. Damn it. Old Liang's countenance turned ashen as he stared at the black-faced middle-aged man. This divine weapon of mine has both offense and defense, but in terms of offense and defense, it can't be compared to a pure fourth-rank divine weapon. The fourth-rank divine inscription of the opponent is a sword-type divine inscription. It's only a matter of time before it breaks through the defense of the divine weapon. Since you have an attack-type divine weapon, kill your way out. Kill my way out. The expression of the black-faced middle-aged man stiffened. Although he had an attack-type fourth-rank divine weapon, his cultivation base wasn't at the Heavenly Dipper realm. He was only at the Yuanfu realm. So what if he had a fourth-rank divine weapon? Initially, they thought that even if Qin Wentian had set up a fourth-rank divine inscription, with their fourth-ranked puppets, as well as their attack-type and defensive-type divine weapons, victory was still within their grasp. However, Qin Wentian had also taken out a fourth-ranked puppet, instantly overturning the situation. Boom! Yet another terrifying shockwave rang out as the gigantic sword slashed downwards in a frenzy. Cracks had already appeared on the umbrella-shaped protective screen of light. If this continues on, it will break sooner or later. Old Liang's countenance turned pale. With them in the center, a storm of swords swept over. As long as the protective screen of light shattered, they would all die without a burial ground. Peng Hai, help out! Eccentric Song turned his gaze towards the Heavenly Dipper sovereign inscriptionist who had yet to act. Peng Hai was someone they were extremely fearful of. Even after killing Qin Wentian and obtaining the ancient scroll of the Ascendant, he, the black-faced middle-aged man and old Liang were still prepared to join forces to deal with Peng Hai. But now they had no choice but to seek help from Peng Hai. However, Peng Hai was still as calm as ever. A long spear appeared in his hands, imbued with a fearsome fiery rune. However, he didn't move, he merely stood there quietly. His eyes were so swollen that it was as though flames were burning within them, as he stared at the divine inscription in front of him. Now that the fourth-rank sword Tempest divine inscription had completely erupted, this was the best time to see the divine inscription clearly. A crisp sound rang out as the protective screen of the fourth-rank divine weapon shattered. Cracks also appeared on the umbrella-shaped protective screen. In that instant, Eccentric Song, Old Liang and the black-faced middle-aged man lifted their heads in shock, staring at the young man in the air. Terror could be seen on their faces. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed, and in an instant, the few of them could feel the intense killing intent radiating from Qin Wentian. Get back here! Eccentric Song commanded the puppet to return, but how could Qin Wentian not know what he was thinking? The golden armored puppet and the Tempest Divine inscription flew over, entangling Qin Wentian's puppet. Bzzz. The silhouette of the black-faced middle-aged man flickered as he dashed out. The long spear of darkness in his hands opened up a path, while the black dragon roared as it dashed out, opening up a path for Qin Wentian. However, as the sound of swords whistled through the air, a gigantic sword was embedded into the ground in front of him. The black-faced middle-aged man inclined his head, only to see countless beams of sword light pointing towards him. As long as Qin Wentian waved his hands, he would die without a burial. Little brother Qin, please hold back for now. At this moment, the large-eyed elder's tone of address towards Qin Wentian was much more polite. A 19-year-old fourth-ranked grandmaster, he naturally had to treat Qin Wentian with respect. The three of them all have some status. This man is a guest elder from the Han clan of the Moon Continent. The Han clan's influence in the Moon Continent isn't weak at all. The large-eyed elder reminded Qin Wentian. That's right, if you kill me, the Han clan will definitely not spare you. The black-faced middle-aged man glared at Qin Wentian. How impressive were you earlier? Yet now you're using your background. How pitiful. If the Han clan wants to avenge you, I will immediately join a transcendent power. Do you think the Han clan would dare to touch me? Qin Wentian's gaze swept over to the black-faced middle-aged man, causing his countenance to turn even darker. A 19-year-old fourth-ranked grandmaster? As long as news of this spread out, how could a mere Han clan be able to contend against the powers that wanted to recruit Qin Wentian? There are so many treasures here, it's a waste to leave them on the three of you. Why don't you leave them for me? As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, sword chi swept out as a gigantic sword slashed downwards. The black-faced middle-aged man blocked with his spear, colliding head-on with the gigantic sword. Abruptly, a resplendent beam of sword light whizzed past his neck, causing him to feel a chill as a line of blood appeared on his neck. Eccentric Song and Eccentric Liang were both terrified when they saw this scene. Their countenances were as white as a sheet of paper. Qin Wentian had slain the black-faced middle-aged man. A fourth-ranked grandmaster had fallen. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.